I'd like to call this meeting, the Clay County Commission, to order. We will begin with our Pledge of Allegiance. If you would all join me. Thank you. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Nolte,
Here.
Commissioner Carpenter,
Here.
Commissioner Thompson.
Here.
That brings us to the approval of the agenda. Is there a motion related to approval of this evening's agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as printed.
Motion has been made for the approval of the agenda as printed. Discussion. I do have one change that I would like to make. I would like to propose that we take the last issue on the regular agenda, that is 2022 Ordinance 43, which I believe there's probably going to be some comment on. And I would like to move that up earlier in the agenda. I would like to move it up to where it would follow 2022-424. So that would be after the planning and zoning issues that come up. Is there any discussion on that?
Sounds good to me. Thank you.
Okay.
No, I'm very comfortable with that.
So with that, Mr. Counselor, do we need a motion and a formal vote to move that up on the agenda? Is consensus good enough?
I think you can take it, if there's consensus on when you take it up, I think you can just take it up at that time.
All right. As there is consensus to do that, we will hear 2022 Ordinance 43 immediately after we take up 2022-424. Try to give everybody a chance to, that's here, not to try to be respectful of their time. All right, so we return now to the underlying motion by Commissioner Thompson on approval of the agenda as it has been changed. Are there any other changes or discussion? Seeing none, please, you can renew your motion.
I close.
Please proceed.
Commissioner Thompson,
Yes.
Commissioner Carpenter.
Yes.
Very good. We have a ceremonial matter, and that is a recognition of retiring clerk, Sandy Baldwin. Administrator?
Thank you, Commissioners. Well, it's certainly bittersweet that I make this announcement and to do a recognition of County Clerk Sandy Baldwin. Sandy has been with the county over 15 plus years, and she actually started in the collector's office. She moved to the clerk's office as deputy county clerk and was recently promoted and selected as our county clerk from 2011, I believe. You know, in the proclamation that Commissioner Nolte has, it certainly touts all of the great things that Sandy has done. She's certainly been very helpful to me as the new county administrator for the past 10 months, but she has done great things for the clerk's office in increasing efficiency and operations within the services of the clerk's office. Customer service is paramount to Sandy, and that's certainly seen not only by the individuals, whether they're coming to get licenses from the clerk's office, or all the agencies that we work with throughout Clay County. She has been instrumental in training numerous municipal clerks through her career here and helping them do their job and serving the citizens of Clay County in many, many ways. And so it's bittersweet. We're certainly going to miss her and her smile and her humor at our leadership team on Thursday mornings. And we certainly wish her all the best. And I know the commissioners, you all also have comments, but on behalf of the staff, we wish her all the best in this next chapter of her life. And we all have her on speed dial.
Thank you. Commissioner Thompson, you probably have the closest working relationship, so please, if you would like to go first.
Thank you so much. Yes, so Sandy Baldwin, what can I say about her? She is basically a staple around the courthouse. She is a household name, basically. You cannot take her anywhere or talk to anybody without somebody being like, I know Sandy Baldwin. I know her. I, of course, adore her, and she has been with me from the minute I walked in these doors. Like 15 plus years, and I think she's made it under 4 crazy separate elected officials. So that is a huge accomplishment. But in all honesty, I don't know what we'll do without you, Sandy. I know we're in great hands and we'll move forward, but you'll be
Yes, you
sorely
are.
missed by me. And I appreciate you. And I would have never made it my first 6 months without you there by my side in the
yes,
clerk's
you would.
office. So I hope you enjoy retirement, but please come back and see us all the time.
Thank you.
We certainly do appreciate the service you've given this county and the idea that you've been serving in a variety of good times and bad times, but you have been a consistent influence for well-run government, and more importantly, somebody who people could go to and feel as though they could ask advice, ask informational questions. And so the fact that you've been such a resource here is something that we will all sorely miss. While we appreciate the fact that you will be spending more time with your family and some of your other interests, certainly we will all be thinking about you as we go through. And when issues come up that we need help on, I'm sure a number of us will be saying, well, go ask Sandy. Oh, wait a minute. So your name will probably be invoked in that manner and others as we go forward. But thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Commissioner Carpenter.
Thank you, Commissioner. Well, I just want to say I absolutely love Sandy Baldwin, and we're going to miss the heck out of you. When I came onto the county commission a couple years ago now, the commission was in a state of turmoil, and Clay County government was in need of a pretty big turnaround. And you were a monumental force in helping to make that happen, helping to guide me and teach me, and I am forever in your debt, and the county is as well, and all your years of service, and we're going to miss you. Thank you.
Very nice. Thank you so much.
With that, we will stand at ease for a moment. We have a couple of things to give you as tokens of our appreciation. So if you join us up by the flags, we can get some pictures.
I'm gonna blow my nose first.
Very well. That brings us to public comments. Are there any comments from the public on any issues? Do keep in mind that if you're here to comment on an issue that we will be taking up, you will have the opportunity to comment then as well. But certainly, if anybody has any comments. Seeing none. That brings us to immediate action. Administrator, and first item on that agenda is 2022-425.
Yes, on immediate action this evening, there are 3 items before the commission. Resolution 2022-425 is approving payments from December 2nd through December 8th in the amount of $1,727,285.39 for 433 invoices. Resolution 2022-414 is approving the deadline for Clay County 2022 taxes to January 3rd, 2023. And Resolution 2022-428 is approving professional services agreement for infrastructure inspection services with Great River Associates for our highway department.
Very good. Are there any questions of the administrator on any of those 3 items?
No questions, thanks.
Or comments, either
No
one?
questions, thank you.
Very well. Is there a motion related to our immediate action agenda?
Commissioner, I move that we approve the immediate action agenda as printed.
Motion has been made for the approval of the immediate action agenda as printed. Discussion? Seeing none, you will recognize the clerk.
Close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes?
That brings us to our consent agenda. Administrator? I'm sorry. Do I need we need a
It is the consent agenda, so these are items of routine business that allow
course.
the commission to approve the consent agenda in one motion.
Exactly. Okay, so we have two items, 412 and 411. Is there a motion related to the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as printed.
Motion's been made for approval of the consent agenda as printed. Discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll. I'm sorry, you're recognized to close.
I close.
Commissioner
Please call the
Thompson?
roll.
Yes?
Mr.
Yes.
Carpenter?
Okay, that brings us to our first item on the regular agenda, 2022-415. Administrator?
Resolution 2022-415 is the approval of a cooperative agreement with the Missouri Department of Social Services from the Prosecuting Attorney's Office. This is for reimbursement for child support services. This is a program in which we participate in. It is a program that will run from 2023 through 2025.
Are there any questions or comments? Questions or comments? Is there anyone here to speak on this, or is it?
If the commission has any questions, the prosecuting attorney is here.
Since there are no questions, is there a motion related to 2022-415?
I move that we approve 2022-415.
Motion's been made for the approval of 2022-415. Discussion? Seeing none, you're recognized to close.
Close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson?
I'm going to recuse myself.
Commissioner Nolte?
Yes. That brings us to 2022-426. Administrator?
Resolution 2022-426 is approving invoice payments for the Clay County Prosecutor's Office from December 2nd through December 8th in the amount of $65,214.45 for 8 invoices.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, is there a motion on 426?
I move that we approve 2022-426.
Motion is made for the approval of 2022-426. Discussion? Seeing none, recognized to close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson?
I'm going to recuse myself.
Commissioner Nolte?
Yes. That brings us to 2022-416. Administrator?
Resolution 2022-416 is consideration of approving a final plat for the Northbrook Farms subdivision. Planning Manager Kip Jones is here to provide information to the commission.
Proceed.
Kip Jones, Planning and Zoning Manager. So this is the final plat for Northbrook Farms. Mike, if you can go to the next slide. Thank you. So to refresh your memory, the preliminary and rezoning were approved by the County Commission in July. The property is outlined in yellow, approximately 144 acres. The proposal is to extend a subdivision a street from the south subdivision, extend that cul-de-sac into the subject property, create 4 additional lots. There is an existing single-family home located off of A Highway, and then this street would be extended into the subdivision with 4 additional lots. So this shot shows the plat itself. As I said, it's five total lots, 4 lots off the cul-de-sac, and the temporary cul-de-sac would be removed. Here's the surrounding area. The subject parcel is outlined in yellow, located off of A Highway in the urban services tier of Clay County. The approval criteria for final plat, if that plat matches the preliminary plat, then it should be approved by the commission. Both staff and the Planning and Zoning Commission believe the final plat matched the preliminary plat. Since it has infrastructure, this project follows a kind of different process than our normal cases. Once approved by the County Commission, the developer could start installing the infrastructure at that point. After that infrastructure is installed, the agencies, all the outside agencies, including Highway, Fire, inspect that infrastructure and approve it. Once it's approved, the developer can record the plat and then sell the lots at that point. And there is a 2-year maintenance period for that infrastructure before the county accepts that into our infrastructure system. During the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, we did not receive any opposition. The Planning and Zoning Commission voted 4-0 to approve with conditions. The applicant has agreed to those conditions. A couple of those conditions include repaving Fishing River Road, and the developer has agreed to replace a stormwater pipe that's part of the adjacent subdivision. So you can see on this slide, the pipe is highlighted in red. This is where they would extend the cul-de-sac. The developer will replace this pipe, and after that 2-year maintenance period, the county would take over maintenance of the street and the pipe. The applicant is present, and I would be happy to answer any questions the commissioners may have.
Are there any questions of Mr. Jones?
No questions, thank you.
No questions, thanks.
If the applicant would like to speak, he or she is certainly welcome. Just as you're making your way up, a couple of points of information. First off, anyone who has an application before us is certainly welcome to speak. It is not a requirement, so certainly it is at your decision to make. For those who come up to speak at the podium, please make sure that the little green light is on around the collar. Speak into the microphone, and please state your name for our audio recordings, and then just proceed. So please go right ahead.
My name is Shannon Stumpenhouse, and I am the owner slash developer, I guess, of this property. I am just here to ask you if you would consider changing the process a little bit on this property, as you hopefully will approve the final plat tonight. At the beginning of this process, I thought as soon as we were done with this meeting, we got to record the plat. So there is an existing property on Lot 1 that is accessed from a highway that does not even touch the street that we're being required to put in to be able to do this subdivision. And that keeps us from being able to sell that property. Well, we can sell it, but it makes it more difficult, and we'll have to jump through some hoops on the back end if we have to wait to sell that property for it to be recorded once the road is in. So my understanding is the reason the process is like that in this county, because in most other counties, from the professionals I've worked with and with the engineers and things, you do record it up front. My understanding of why it's this way is so that's kind of the leverage that the county has over me to make sure that I do what I'm supposed to do as far as put in the road and meet the requirements and all of that. But in this case, if we could go ahead and record it, that would enable us to sell the existing home that really isn't even affected by the rest of this. And the leverage to make sure that I do the rest of it is I can't get a building permit on any of the other lots to be able to do anything. So I wouldn't be able to do anything with the rest of it without continuing and doing the road as I had planned. So I'm just asking that you guys would consider to go ahead and let it be recorded so it'll be official, so that that property that's currently vacant, that's been vacant for almost a year as we've gone through this, can be occupied. There's a sweet family with a pregnant wife and 3 children already. They're waiting to move in there. So I hate with weather, who knows when I would be able to get them in there because of the requirement to have it not record until the road is in and approved.
Certainly. Thank you for the comment. Does anybody have any questions of the applicant?
No questions, thank you.
Mr.
No questions,
Commissioner
no.
Coffin, I should say.
No questions. I think there may be a discussion as to whether that's an option to do that or not.
We'll wait for a moment, and we will go ahead and inquire of Mr. Jones. Thank you very much. Mr. Jones, would you like to comment on the request?
So I would add to the commission that there is a section of the Land Development Code 151-3.6 which deals with major subdivisions. It specifically says that the plat cannot be recorded until all of the criteria have been met. So I think there's reasons for that. Several of the criteria have been met at this point, but there's several, including the infrastructure being installed, the outside agencies approving that infrastructure, that haven't been met. So this would be a deviation of every subdivision that we've done in the past that I'm aware of. It wouldn't follow our normal process.
And is it the request that we approve this evening? Or is it going to go to next week?
I think that's up to the commission.
Administrator?
That's correct. We're normally out of our sequence here because it is the end of the year and next week is our last meeting. So we wanted to get this on and provide an option for the commission. If you wanted to take action tonight, you could. If not, we still have one more meeting left before the end of the year, and so it certainly the commission's pleasure whether you would like to consider approving this evening or having it placed on next week's agenda. Again, we're trying to limit next week's agenda to really immediate action only because it is really the wrap-up meeting for the year for the commission. And normally, you know, you don't mind carrying over items, but since we actually have a new commission that will be starting the 1st of January, we were trying to conclude for the applicants and wrap it up this year.
Thank you. Yes, and we did, of course, pass the other two that had to do with the funding for the prosecuting attorney. It was, again, it's internal, and I kind of went through. It seemed logical to go ahead and get those out of the way, as you say, to make sure that our next meeting was available. Is there a sense from the commission that they would like to hear this again next? Would you like to go and put it on the consent or regular agenda next week, or would you care to pass it at this time?
I mean, I'm comfortable passing it this evening. You know, I think the question of whether or not we can deviate from the land development code sounds like probably not. Maybe, you know, my request of Mr. Jones would be if, you know, it was suggested that perhaps we're out of sync with how it's commonly done in other areas. If that could be looked into for future applicants, that might be a wise thing. But in terms of this one tonight, I support moving it forward tonight.
Commissioner Thompson?
No, I'm comfortable with approved with the box mark. Approved.
That would be a part of the motion for
It is.
passage. Thank you, because
You're
that's one that's, that part of the motion is generally easy to overlook. So is there a motion, is there anything else, Mr. Jones, you'd like to add?
No, sir.
Is there anyone else here wishing to comment on 2022-416? Seeing none, I would entertain either a motion for passage with the box checked or a recommendation to put it on next week's agenda, either on consent or regular. What is the pleasure of the commission?
Commissioner, I will make a motion to approve 2022-416 with the box marked
Very,
approved.
thank you very much. Motion has been made for the approval of 2022-416 with the box checked. Discussion.
Thanks.
Very well. Seeing none, you are recognized to close.
I close?
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes. That
brings us to the next three items, which are bundled together. That would be 2022-417, 418, and 419. Administrator?
Resolution 2022-417, 418, and 419 are companion resolutions for the rezoning preliminary plat and final plat for the Walnut Ridge Farms subdivision. Manager Jones is here to provide information for the commission.
Please proceed.
Kip Jones, Planning and Zoning Manager. Mike, can you go to the next slide, please? So this is Walnut Ridge Farms. It's a rezoning preliminary final plat. Mike, can you go to the next one, please? So the property is outlined in yellow. It's approximately 22 acres. It's zoned agricultural. It has one single-family residence on it. It's located off of Thomas Lane. The proposal is to, right now it's 2 lots, but they're very unique lots. There's a small acreage around the existing house, and then the rest of the acreage exists as the second lot. So the proposal is to divide it into the 2 lots that you can see on the screen. It would create one buildable lot. We would rezone each lot to R1, which is our current standard for lots 10 to 20 acres. And lot 1 would become a buildable lot for one single-family home. It's located in the urban services tier. Staff and the Planning and Zoning Commission felt this met the 10-plus acre exemption with the agricultural land preservation. It is adjacent to the city of Smithville. We sent for comments to the city of Smithville, but did not receive any. Here is the surrounding area. The subject property is highlight or has the red dot on it. Everything in the gray is city limits of Smithville. Platte County to the west. Anything with color to it is unincorporated clay. This has 5 rezoning criteria that both staff and the Planning and Zoning Commission felt have been addressed. This follows our normal process of publishing it in the newspaper. We sent a total of 26 certified letters, and final approval is with the County Commission. We reached out to outside agencies. None of these agencies expressed opposition to this case. And staff received phone call inquiries from adjacent property owners, but no objections were stated. There were no public comments at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, and the Planning and Zoning Commission voted 4-0 to recommend approval with one condition that the applicant agreed to. I'm happy to answer any questions you have, and the applicant is present as well.
Thank you. 4-0, were there some members not in that meeting?
That's correct. We had 2 that were absent.
Okay. Questions of Mr. Jones?
No questions, thank you.
No questions, thanks.
If the applicant would like to speak, please come forward and give us your comments or thoughts. Once again, not required, just want to make sure you had the opportunity to speak. Very well. I'm sorry? Okay. Want to make sure there wasn't somebody saying something I couldn't hear. With that, is there anyone else wishing to address these 3 issues? Seeing none. Once again, we have, since we are at the end of the year, that does make it kind of a special circumstance. I'd be willing to entertain a motion on the disposition of these 3 items.
I move that we approve 2022 417, 418, and 419 with box marked approve.
Very well. A motion's been made for the approval of 2020, I'm sorry, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
I don't, thank you,
Very good.
Commissioner, but
Motion has been made on 2022 417, 418, 419 with the box marked approved checked. Discussion? Seeing none, recognize to close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson?
yes.
That brings us to items 2022 420 and 421. Administrator?
Resolution 2022-420 and 421 are companion resolutions regarding the rezoning and final plat of the Dowdle Estates, and Planning Manager Kip Jones is here to provide information to the Commission.
Please proceed.
Kip Jones, Planning and Zoning Manager. So this is a rezoning and final plat, as the property is already platted. It was platted originally in 2004. It's approximately 48 and a half acres. It is zoned residential at this point, and it comprises of 2 lots. So you have lot number 2, which is a 10-acre lot right there, and lot number 3, which is 38 and a half acres. The proposal is to combine that into 1 lot. You can see on the aerial image, there is a house on the subject property. Part of the reason for combining these 2 lots is this barn right here straddles that property line, and by replatting, it would get rid of that issue. There are a couple easements across the property that are noted on the plat. This property exists in the rural low density tier. Staff and Planning and Zoning Commission felt this met the requirements, as it is a 20-plus acre lot. It would be rezoned to agricultural. Staff believes it's consistent with the comp plan. You can see the surrounding area, subject property with the red dot on it, large amount of ag zoning to the east, and then a lot of R1 zoning that was done years ago. Has those same 5 rezoning criteria that staff and the Planning and Zoning Commission felt had been addressed. Follows that same process. We sent a total of 27 certified letters for this case. And we included those outside agencies again. This one's a little bit unique. Since we're combining lots, we did not require approval from the health department or the water district, because we're not talking about additional septic systems or additional water meters. Staff received phone call inquiries, but no opposition was, actually there was opposition expressed. There were concerns about potential of future ag uses. So we're rezoning this back to agricultural. We received public comment during the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. That comment indicated that the adjacent property owners didn't object to combining the lots, but they requested of the Planning and Zoning Commission to add a stipulation that pigs not be allowed on this property. In addition, or if they didn't do that, they requested that it stay zoned residential. Again, the current standard is 20 plus would be rezoned to agricultural. The Planning and Zoning Commission voted 4-0 to recommend approval, and they did not add any stipulations to this project. There is one condition that the applicant has agreed to as well. I'd be happy to answer any questions the commissioners may have, and the applicant is present.
Any questions for Mr. Jones?
No questions.
No questions.
Yes, if the applicant would like to make any kind of comments, we'd certainly be interested in hearing them, if he so chooses.
Yes, sir, thank
Thank
you.
you. The only thing that gives me some pause on this is, although it sounds as though to me the issue of possibly having hogs present on the property, I'm not sure that quite is something we are able to deal with in a way that maybe would be, I guess what I'm saying is I'm looking to see if there's any controversy that would impinge on the actual issue that before us.
Well, I would add that any property that's 20-plus acres and zoned ag in unincorporated Clay County is allowed unlimited animals as long as they don't become a nuisance. I'm not aware of any rezonings that stipulations have been added to limit the ag uses.
Okay. So really, while there's a concern, it is not something we have the ability to deal with in a constructive way. That sounds like it's more of a, I don't know, an issue beyond what we are dealing with.
Well, I think the commission could choose to add a condition. I just don't think it's been something that's been done in the past.
Okay. Commissioner Thompson.
Commissioner, I feel comfortable moving forward with this, voting on it today, but if there's a concern of you think it might potentially be some issues, we can easily move this over to next week, but I would hate to have her wait a whole nother week and.
Yeah, the thing, I do take your point, and that was why I was trying to, if there was a concern raised that we had, that was something that we could deal with, that would be a little bit different. If it's something that really our actions are not going to be that impactful on, I'm not sure that's really, I'm a little bit hesitant to start making those kind of stipulations. Commissioner Carpenter.
Oh, yeah, I'm comfortable with the approving tonight, if you all
Very
are.
well. That being the case, I would be interested in entertaining a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve 2022-420 and 421 with the box marked approved.
Motion's been made for the approval of 2022-420 and 422 with the appropriate box checked for approved. I'm sure I've got my numbers correct. I do. Any discussion? Seeing none, you're recognized to close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
That brings us to our next group of zoning issues. That would be 422, 422, and 423.
Sir, I would like to leave here with a clear understanding you approved my request, or all that I'm looking into.
That is correct. We will not be taking it up again. We have passed it, so yes, we will not be taking it up next week. You're done with that.
Yes, I appreciate that for all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Jones. I'm sorry, Administrator. I just looked over and saw him, and I just went right for it. Please
All right.
proceed.
Resolution 2022-422 and 423 are companion resolutions for the preliminary plat and final plat for the Catron Farms project, and Planning Manager Kip Jones is here to provide information.
Please proceed.
Kip Jones, Planning and Zoning Manager. So this is a preliminary and final plat for Catron Farms. It's currently 64 acres. It's zoned agricultural, has one single-family residence, and it's located off of In Highway and Northeast 96th Street. The portion of the land that we're going to plat is highlighted in yellow. There would be two lots. One lot would be platted, one would be unplatted. So the land to the east meets one of the exemptions in the Land Development Code to the platting process. It's 40-plus acres with at least 100 feet of road frontage with access. So this land does not need to be included in the plat. So the plat just includes the 24-acre lot with the house. It would remain zoned agricultural because it meets our 20-acre minimum, so we're not rezoning in this case. It's located in the rural low-density tier. Staff and Planning and Zoning Commission felt it was consistent with the comp plan. A 20-plus acre lot is consistent in any tier in unincorporated Clay County. Here's the surrounding area. It's not a highly populated area. It's mainly zoned agricultural. You can see Cooley Lake is located to the west, and it's near the Ray County line to the east. This follows that same process. We did not have to public notice it in the newspaper. We sent a total of 11 letters, and we included those outside agencies. We received no objection from those outside agencies for this project. Staff received phone call inquiries, but no objections to this case. There was no public comment during the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, and the Planning and Zoning Commission voted 4-0 to recommend approval with the one condition that the applicant has agreed to. I'm happy to answer any questions the commissioners may have, and the applicant is present.
Any questions of Mr. Jones?
No questions.
If the applicant would like to make any comments or has any,
I have no comments.
I heard you there somewhere. Oh, there you are.
No comments.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else wishing to comment on these issues? Seeing none. Once again, we have the ability to take a motion on this in a couple of different opportunities. What is the pleasure of the commission?
Oh, I support moving it forward this evening, if that's the question.
Yes, it is. I
Yes.
just was
Yep.
looking for a motion of some sort.
Gotcha.
I agree.
Well, I'll make the motion then to approve 2022-422 and 423, marked approved.
Very well. Motion's been made for 2022, 422 and 423 with the box marked approved. Discussions, seeing none, you'll recognize to close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes?
And I believe that brings us to the last of our zoning issues. That would be 22. I'm sorry, my documents seem to be out of order. 22-424. Thank you.
Resolution 2022-424 is consideration of approving well water as the sole source water supply for the Perez project. And Planning Manager Kip Jones is here to provide information.
Please proceed.
Kip Jones, Planning and Zoning Manager. So I've got the property pulled up on the screen. It has the red dot on it. It's 14.5 acres. It's zoned ag. It gets its access through an easement through the front property. The request is to allow a well water for residential use. That comes out of 151-8.9 of the Land Development Code that basically states that all proposed development is to be connected to an enclosed water supply system. However, it does give the County Commission the ability to grant an exemption, and specifically it states only under unusual circumstances. Typically, in the past, those unusual circumstances have been when the water district can't supply a water meter for a new build on a new house. In this case, Public Water Supply District Number 2 of Ray County has indicated that they cannot supply a water meter for this location. No opposition was received leading up to or during the Planning and Zoning Commission case, and the Planning and Zoning Commission voted 4-0 to recommend approval with the one condition, which is that they follow all MDNR regulations for the well. The applicant has agreed with that condition, and staff is happy to answer any questions, and Mr. Perez, the applicant, is present as well.
Questions or comments of Mr. Jones?
No questions.
Very well. If the applicant would care to speak, please come forward. No? Okay, very good. Anyone else wishing to speak on 2022-424? Seeing none, is there a motion related to 424?
I'll make a motion to approve 2022-424.
Motion's been made for the approval of 2022-424. Discussion, seeing none, you're recognized to close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes?
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
Very well. That brings us to the variation in our agenda that we had put together at the beginning of this meeting this evening. So the next item on our agenda would be 2022 Ordinance 43. Administrator?
2022 Ordinance 43 is an ordinance ensuring the ethical expenditure of public funds and a commitment to a thriving community through the requirement that entities and projects receiving or benefiting from public funds pay prevailing wage.
I believe this would be an issue brought forth by Commissioner Carpenter. If you would like to, we did discuss this last week, but I believe it certainly merits further discussion. If you would like to give us any information you would like to on this particular ordinance, certainly proceed.
Thank you, Commissioner. Yeah, as you mentioned, had a good discussion, I think, on it last week. The goal here is to make sure that when Clay County is utilizing taxpayer dollars, that we do business, especially on large projects, construction projects, that we do business with responsible bidders. And so that means that we want to use contractors who provide health insurance to their employees, that they are properly licensed, that they haven't been barred from state or federal projects in the past year, that they pay prevailing wage, and that supervisors are 30-hour OSHA certified. In the spirit of compromise, after last week's discussion and after further conversation with a variety of folks, including county staff in our administrator, the purchasing department, et cetera. We did make a few changes from last week's version to scale it back somewhat. That includes removing the apprenticeship language, requiring the apprenticeship language, and the independent contractors language as well. I still believe those are good provisions, and I think my goal with those is as we move forward with this modified bid process and these new requirements in place, I think we're going to see that process goes smoothly. I think we're going to see that we get higher quality bids, that workers are better protected, and I think that we can have the conversation again on some of those items if we want to consider adding them to this list. But the list that we do maintain is, in my view, necessary and important for the well-being of the folks that we pay with taxpayer dollars to do these projects. And the goal is to make sure that they're safe, that they're fairly compensated, and that they have fair benefits that they deserve. And that's really what it boils down to. And so I look forward to hearing, I think we'll probably have some feedback from folks tonight, and I look forward to hearing people's thoughts. And I think this will be a really good and important step for Clay County and making sure that we're doing right by workers.
Thank you. The way we will proceed is that we'll go ahead and have a comment from each one of the commissioners up here. Then we will engage in some discussion, assuming that that's the way we go. After that, then we will hear from anyone who wishes to comment on this particular issue. Could I see a show of hands? I got a pretty good idea, but how many people would care to speak on this issue this evening? A goodly number. So just to get us out of here at a decent hour, according to ordinance that we have, I would like to limit the amount of comments, as to say the duration of comments. I think if we can keep it to 3 minutes, which might not sound very long, but when you're up there speaking and everybody's looking at you, that can be an eternity. So what I would like to do then is proceed on that level. Also, I would request that that we keep the repetition to a minimum if possible. So if you want to echo the comments of someone before you, you can perhaps, if again, this is your time to speak, so I'm not dictating, I'm just saying if for the sake of moving the issue along, you might say, yes, I agree with the remarks of the gentleman before me, or whatever it may be. But if we can keep it brief and move it along, I think that will be the best way to keep it to where everybody gets a chance to speak on this issue. That being said, Commissioner Thompson, if you'd like to make any open remarks on this.
Thank you, Commissioner. I would like to say that 2022 Ordinance 43, it basically really is a good government measure being put into place. I have been very saddened to find out in the past week that this has been turned into a political item, and that is not what this is. This is about keeping our American workers safe, making sure we have good paying jobs, and making sure that our taxpayer dollars are going to good infrastructure. Because in the long run, that's going to save us money when we have good things put into place. And I support anything that is going to keep our workers and our communities safe. And I don't have to remind everybody about the bridge collapse that we had. And I don't ever want to see something like that in Clay County again.
Commissioner, if we could
That's all I'm
be
gonna-
very judicious about comments that might well create liability for the county.
I completely understand, and that is all I'm going to say on it. But I do believe in that our working Americans are the backbone of our nation. And we need to be able to support you and make sure that we have provisions put in place and keep everybody safe. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll start by saying that I just got the most recent copy yesterday late afternoon as far as this legislation goes. I want to start off by saying I appreciate the spirit of compromise that Commissioner Carpenter is putting forth. I do appreciate that quite a bit. I still have some reservations, to say the least. One is Commissioner Carpenter had mentioned that this deals with health care insurance. My understanding is prevailing wage does not deal with health care, so we are in fact expanding something. This goes beyond prevailing wage and to some real extent beyond the scope of the bill as titled. I don't want to mix my apples and oranges in what happens in Jeff City and procedurally what happens here. I think we are a little bit less formal on those things, but it does concern me that we are unilaterally expanding what what prevailing wage means. Of the concerns that I have, the two chief ones are these, and they don't have as much to do with the issue as the process that we are going through. I have two concerns that have been on my mind ever since we've started on this issue. Issue number one is the absence of any fiscal note or any fiscal estimate on what it would cost. Because this ordinance contains penalties, it is incumbent on any agency who imposes penalties to actually do the research and make sure that when they levy those penalties, they have the documentation and that they are valid and proven problems that we have. That means FTEs. We have 20 at least or more vacancies in this county, which is not unusual in any of the any entity right now, whether a private or public employer. It is very, very difficult to get employees right now. So the idea that we would have trouble being able to bring in employees that would be able to do that, and that they would also require payment, that's going to be an extra expense, and one that we are uncertain of. Administrator, you are also our chief budget officer. Do you have any, do you feel as though that there would be no additional cost to the county incurred with the passage of this, just with what you know now?
You know, that would be hard for us to gauge. We have not done a fiscal analysis with regard to that. And again, I went for clarification. You know, the county certainly currently complies with prevailing wage law on our projects, and this does not raise that threshold. The issue would be the other items that have been mentioned, whether that will have an impact on the number of competitive bids that we receive. I don't know. We've not done any kind of research to see for any other entities across the country that may have similar ordinances, you know, how or if that has impacted that. That's something we have not done yet.
Which is, I think, something that is very important, especially since we are coming up to budget time. We need to account for that. Just for point of information, we are currently looking at the 2023 budget. That budget is required that we pass it by, I believe, January 30 of next year. So we have about 6 weeks, give or take, somewhere in that realm. And if we were to pass something like this, responsible budgeting dictates that we should make sure we have the money to actually carry through. Otherwise, I don't see how we enforce it. And if we're going to put issues out there that we are not going to enforce, it makes it rather a hollow thing. So I think that before we go forward, it is absolutely necessary for us to do that. We've had other issues come up, including the Prop A, which was voted on by the people last November. When we did that, there was, in fact, a spreadsheet with the projected costs and with where that cost was going to fall. So we had an analysis there. We also had several meetings where it was on for discussion, and we went through it fairly exhaustively, both there and in public meetings before it was brought before this body for a vote. So that is, I say that because that's a standard that I'm not applying outside of myself. That is a standard that was applied to an issue that I brought forward. So I think that is important. The second issue that weighs heavily on my mind is we have just had an election. We are in the process of becoming a constitutional county. In fact, that process will conclude at the end of this year, beginning of next, with the institution of 4 new commissioners. We have 4 commissioners-elect. That actually constitutes a majority of this body when those members are seated. That's going to happen within mere weeks. Something this far-reaching, I believe, should be brought before the larger commission. I, in fact, have a number of issues that I would like to bring before the commission. Not to mention the fact that there are a number of appointments to boards and commissions that I would like to bring forward to the commission. However, I have not done that up to this point because I thought that it was important to hear all the people's representatives and have them express their thoughts on it. So I withheld moving some of the items that I would like to move forward, because I really believe that we need to respect the will of the people and the fact that they voted these individuals into office, and they have to have a voice, and to move something of this significance forward without a good reason for moving it forward this quickly, I think is not good government. It strikes me that for that reason, we should delay it. My understanding is, and I would certainly like to hear what opinion to the contrary, but the idea of taking this up, excuse me, in early 2023, I don't know that that significantly damages what is going on as far as this goes. And so that's why I think that we should be delaying this. We should be tabling it at some point. I want to make sure, because we have people here, I will not make that motion right now, because a number of individuals have shown up, and we are here to hear what you have to say. But I want to make clear that my objections, first and foremost, those that I may have with the issue itself, are certainly I would want to discuss those concerns I have. But the overriding concern is, are we exercising good government? Are we doing things in a way that is transparent and a way that will respect the vote of the people that they just had? In the past, there's been an attempt to work around commissioners, and that's a shame. I don't think we want to start our new government and our new year with that kind of a shadow over it. I think it is prudent to wait until we have a fiscal note, so that we can at least have a notion as to how much money this is going to cost. And we need to have, I believe, the input of the newly elected officials. Those are my thoughts. I have thoughts also on some of the issues themselves that I have concerns, but those are the ones that I find are a bit overriding, and would be ones that I would have a lot of concerns about. And I would have that concern no matter what the subject matter we were hearing, as long as it fell into this category of having specific effect. So for those reasons, I am very troubled by this. I think there would be no detriment to waiting until we had a full complement of commissioners here to weigh in and express the will of the people that put them in office. And I think we need to make sure that we respect that. Anyway, with that, I'm going to open up the discussion a little bit more among commissioners, and then once we've kind of had a chance to bat it around a little bit, I'd like to hear from members of the public, and I will kind of repeat the procedure as far as making sure the mic is on and all that, so that everybody is able to be heard efficiently. Commissioner Carpenter, since it is your issue, please go ahead and make any comments you'd like at this time, or start the discussion.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I'll take those two main issues kind of in reverse order. First, in terms of waiting or not waiting, I'll reiterate, like I said last week, we're following the standard protocol here. Nothing is being done out of normal order. Our rules state that we propose resolutions or ordinances 1 week, we hear them, discuss them, take public input, which is what we did last week, and then after a week, we come back, we do the same thing again, and then we vote on it, which is exactly what we're doing here. And so I'm not proposing that we deviate at all from our normal rules. What I would suggest is, just a couple weeks ago, we passed a $7 million law enforcement resource center resolution, which is a much bigger and more costly item than what is proposed here today. And it was not suggested that we wait a few weeks for the new commission before we do that. Respectfully, I would suggest that it feels more to me like there's concern about the policy itself, and that is perfectly valid. That's what debate is for, and we may have different opinions. But in terms of whether or not we're respecting the incoming commissioners, that kind of thing, I think if that were a legitimate concern, I don't think we would have locked us into a $7 million initiative just a couple weeks ago. And so I just propose that we follow our normal order, our normal rules, which is what we're doing here. In terms of the cost, you know, we're not the first governmental jurisdiction to do a responsible bidder ordinance. This has been done in many other areas. It is designed not to require enforcement officers. There is no special hiring of folks to enforce this. The way that the responsible bidder program works is at the initial stage in the bid, the companies themselves are going to have to demonstrate that they meet these criteria. So they're going to have to demonstrate that they give health insurance to their employees. They're going to have to demonstrate that their supervisors are 30-hour OSHA certified. And when they apply for the bid, they're going to have to include that information. And if they don't, they're not going to qualify, and they're not going to get the job. So this isn't really a matter of hiring enforcement officers. It's designed to be done at the front end without additional staff required. And so I don't have those concerns around cost. That being said, the cost, certainly if I'm wrong about that and we have to hire a single additional employee, first of all, I think that's well worth it to make sure that we're doing right by workers on taxpayer-funded jobs, making sure they're safe, making sure that they're have fair wages and benefits, and certainly wouldn't come anywhere near the cost, like I said, of the $7 million initiative that we just passed a couple weeks ago. So, in my view, I feel comfortable moving this forward today. What I will add, finally, is that when we meet again in January and new commissioners come on, if they would like to propose an amendment or to repeal it altogether or whatever, anybody's going to have the ability to do that. Just because we pass this tonight in no way precludes or limits commissioners, any of the three of us or any of the incoming four, from modifying it in the future. And frankly, one of the good things about the way our body is designed, even when we move to 7, is that we can be pretty nimble. We can see if things are working, and if they need to be modified, we can do so. We're not take the federal government or even the state government, where you have a House and a Senate with hundreds of members, and then you have the executive branch, and changing law becomes very difficult. Here, if we need to modify this, the 7 of us can do that in a heartbeat. That being said, I think, especially with the changes that we've made, I feel totally comfortable moving this forward, and I think it's going to be one of the most important things we've done as a county in a long time to benefit working people, and I'm very proud of the product.
I have to disagree on the sheriff's facility. That had, you're right, there was a substantial project that also was preceded by multiple discussion. And there was a reason for moving that at the time we moved it, and that was to make sure that we were locking in bids for the sheriff and that we were able for him to go forward. So, and that was, you're right, that was several weeks ago. I mean, we can only delay so much, but we are literally a couple of weeks away from having those commissioners. And I disagree. The process that we have followed, and it's not, that has been the procedure, is when there have been significant issues, they were brought before the commission prior to a vote, or at least the discussion was extended so that every commissioner had the ability to weigh in, including those that are already coming in. As I mentioned, I just happened to get a copy of this new resolution, new ordinance yesterday afternoon. I don't know why I was not provided with one earlier, but that feels, it is reminiscent of things that have happened in the past, and that concerns me a lot.
Well, as you know, I can't directly communicate with you, so that's
true.
not on me to get it to you directly. I think it was online Monday, is my understanding.
But I was unaware that it was available. I wasn't aware there were changes.
Yeah, but again,
I'm not accusing you.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, for what it's worth, I did not have access to the new version until yesterday.
Gotcha. Well, it is, like I say, very largely like the version that we discussed last week, with the changes that I mentioned here tonight, which, if anything, slightly scaled back the initial proposal. And so those changes that I mentioned earlier, in turn taking out the apprentice language and the independent contractor language. Otherwise, it is the same proposal that we had last week. And in terms of when it got to who, as you know, that's just not. That will change starting next year with the sunshine law changes, but as of right now, it's that's just a matter of reality that we can't communicate directly other than at these public meetings.
Which is, you're right, this is a difficult way to do business. That was one of the things I liked the most about our new constitution, was that it would allow us to be able to more easily come to a meeting of the minds and to communicate information that we needed to much more quickly. So that is something that I do, but I still, and perhaps it's a product of my experience from the past commission times, but the idea of bringing this in under the wire so that those commissioners are not, and the thing is, we now have commissioners-elect, and they are, like I say, a matter of weeks. What would be the substantive damage done to this issue if it were taken up in January, say?
Oh yeah, I'm not suggesting that there would be substantive damage done. In fact, from having heard from a couple of the incoming commissioners, I think that there is actually going to be support for this initiative. And that, like I said, in terms of making changes or modifications or even potentially expanding beyond what we passed here this evening, any commissioner at any time will be able to propose that. And so I look forward to, if those discussions happen again next year, that I look forward to that quite a bit. But no, my view is simply that, we follow our standard protocol, which is what we're doing with this. Just 2 weeks ago, like I mentioned, we passed the $7 million expenditure item, which I think was a far more costly item that we didn't wait the extra month for the new commissioners to come on. So in my view, that's not really the important thing. The important thing here is that we pass this initiative to make sure that we're doing right by workers when we've got taxpayer dollars in play.
And it is important this evening, for what reason again? I mean, I realize that the thing is, I would differ a little bit on your definition of protocol, because the thing is it the protocol when we're passing some of these resolutions? Yes, it is. When we deal with larger issues, we generally have a broader discussion. And I've got to tell you, I've gotten a call from a number of citizens today, and their first reaction is, what the heck is going on? We had no idea this was happening. We have not informed the public. We are acting in I believe, a less than transparent manner. I think by having a discussion, we would give people an opportunity to come forward and vent their, or should I say, express their issues. Would this pass if it were in January? It could easily do that, and I understand that. But like I say, for me, this is a principle of making sure that we are informing the public and giving all members of the public the ability to weigh in. I disagree with you that there would be little or no cost to the county, because I think we are going to have to we're asking for a substantial amount of information. That information is going to have to be gathered, it's going to have to be processed. So we are going to have and it may well be the case that it may be correct that we don't have any substantial fiscal note. We should do it anyway. Like I say, this is not a standard I'm applying to this piece of ordinance. This is something that I applied to myself when I put ordinances out. When I'm putting out something that has what I believe to have a significant effect, I want to have discussion prior to introducing it. I want to have a fiscal impact. Obviously, there's some things that are manifestly have no fiscal impact. This does, as did the issue that I worked on, and I wanted to make sure that when citizens looked at what I was proposing and then gave us feedback on what they thought, that they were as informed as possible, even though that information might cut against me, even though that information would be used to oppose what I was trying to propose, what I was proposing. I still felt that it was good government and absolutely necessary that we get as many people involved as possible. I can't tell you how many people called today in this industry and said, I had no idea. Now, apparently, there are some segments of the population that were well informed on this issue, and it seems like a rather selective release of this information to the public.
Well, I mean, Commissioner, as you know, we publicly notice our meetings with the agenda, all of our items. We did that last week on this item. We had a lengthy discussion on it then. We've had a week since then. Obviously, anybody's welcome to attend the meetings. It's publicly noticed again this week. following completely normal protocol. There's been no deviation whatsoever. In terms of cost, again, it's not that we have to go get that information. When contractors apply for the bid, they will have to provide that information and demonstrate that they meet these criteria. So, when responsible bid ordinances have passed in other locations, it isn't about hiring enforcement officers. The criteria gets collected from the contractors on their end at the front end. And again, in terms of cost, this is nothing compared to the $7 million thing that we just did 2 weeks ago.
If you object to the $7 million facility for the sheriff, I mean, you voted for it, and there was a lot of comment, and there was a lot of upfront comment.
I did vote for it, and that's sort of my point is, we all supported moving that forward despite the fact that the new commission isn't in place yet, and it will hamstring their ability to utilize those funds much more than this item would. You've mentioned a couple of times now your proposal to cut property taxes for commercial property owners. Obviously, that was another multi-million-dollar tax reduction. That, too, was a much costlier and bigger item than this one.
And also went to a vote of the people, of course. My proposal was not to cut those taxes, although that was the result. My proposal was to put it before the voters and let the people decide whether or not they thought that was the appropriate action to take. So, even at that, there were more steps before that policy was implemented. The first and foremost being the vote of the people, which was, I think, absolutely necessary to give any validity to that at all. But you'd mentioned that other entities who have done this before who has passed this particular piece of ordinance before? Is there anyone that we could look at and say, okay, so it was Jackson County or whoever you care to name? Is there anybody who has already passed this and taken it out on the road and said, okay, we've been through the system, we've been through this process, and here's what is there anyone that you could point to that would be an example?
Yeah, I mean, look, responsible bidder ordinances have been passed for many years in many locations.
With the healthcare providers?
Oh, absolutely, and some that are actually go much farther than this
Could you
version.
name one and give me a note?
Well, sure. There is a study from the Economic Institute of Illinois that examined responsible bidder ordinances there in Illinois. It found no statistical increase, significant increase in the cost of projects, and it actually led to an 8% increase in the number of people who applied for bids. So, is there information out there? Sure. I mean, this particular ordinance is crafted specifically for Clay County, so it isn't word for word the same as any other item out there.
But to tell you the truth, when you're talking about statistics and studies, I can come up with the same ones that show the opposite. What I'm looking for is someone who has been through the process, and I realize this is sculpted specifically for Clay County, but has there been anyone that we can talk to, anyone who would say, yes, our form of government, whether municipal or county, has been through this process, and here's what we have found? Because I think that is something I think that would be significant. To go back to what we just talked about, the surtax thing, we made it clear from the very beginning, those of us who were advocating for it, that this was a unique piece of legislation. This was this item was something that had not been done before, and so from that point of view, we could come up with some fiscal notes. And the thing is, even with those fiscal notes, there was the argument made that there would be an offset from other sources of revenue. So it's more complicated than that. So what I'm looking for is somehow that we can have some confidence going forward.
I understand. So in terms of the fiscal note conversation, look, when you proposed reducing taxes on commercial property owners, I was opposed, among other reasons, because disproportionately the largest corporate entities that own the most commercial land got the biggest chunk of that multi-million-dollar tax cut. And so I did have concerns around the cost of it and not being able to fund vital services here in Clay County. Our school districts were also impacted by that. So I do respect the concerns around costs, and that's why I was opposed to that. When you do a tax reduction, yours was a 10% tax reduction, it is very easy to calculate. You can look at how much that tax is currently bringing in, you then reduce it by 10%. It's a much easier way to get a number. As you know, outside of straight taxing numbers, we don't typically, when we vote on resolutions and ordinances, we don't typically have fiscal notes. We don't have a team of research staff employed by the county to produce those. So in my 2 years here, and you can tell me if it was different before, but we've never had a fiscal note on anything other than a straight reduction in the tax number. So asking for a fiscal note on this item when we haven't had it on anything other than a tax item where the accounting is very straightforward, we don't have the staff in place to do that. If there's a suggestion that we hire additional county staff to do that kind of work and that kind of research work, I'm open to that discussion. But that hasn't been a thing in my 2 years.
Well, for instance, Kansas City, I understand, is having trouble with their compliance for prevailing wage. If the information I'm getting is correct, and again, since I've not had the luxury of time to research this, I have not been able to get it nailed down like I would like to. I'd like to get more information on this. But my understanding is Kansas City is having trouble because they cannot do compliance. And one of the things that I wonder about, so Kansas City cannot get the people in to actually enforce those, and there's been a number of discussions around that, which I believe may well have included the entity who has been, I guess, wrote the base legislation for this. My concern is this a cost shift thing? Is this a way for Kansas City to say, if Clay County passes this, then we start doing the compliance work that they're not doing? And I've got a real problem with the idea of Clay County taxpayers subsidizing the obligations that Kansas City has taken on.
I would have a problem with that too. I can speak to that. This has nothing to do with municipal projects. So, and that was some of the concern that I heard, that maybe this applied to municipalities. This only applies to Clay County. So these are Clay County taxpayer-funded projects, and the cities within Clay County will continue to have their own separate bid process, their own separate enforcement of the rules that they have in place. So this doesn't impact them at all.
So if we had a project where we were extending an incentive, and so was Kansas City, we would be doing the compliance where we would have our responsibility under this ordinance to do that work.
Well, as you know, and we discussed this last week, there are two sections to the ordinance. One is the bulk of it, which is county projects over $75,000 will have to meet these criteria. That is the bulk of what we're doing in the ordinance. There is also a section that discusses tax incentives, TIFs and tax abatements, property tax abatements, et cetera, that says if Clay County hands those out, that they will have to pay, that we will have to enforce prevailing wage, et cetera, on those projects as well. But as we discussed last week, Clay County doesn't have much of a history of engaging in TIFs and tax abatements, et cetera. So that piece of this ordinance is really just more of a hypothetical in the future. If we're going to get into the business as a county government of handing out TIFs and tax abatements to developers, then I think we ought to require them to meet the basic criteria as well, make them pay prevailing wage, make them provide health insurance, that kind of thing. So, in my view, that makes a lot of sense if we ever start doing that. But as you know, we don't really have much of a history in the county of doing that. And so that particular provision only kicks in if we start down the path of tax abatements.
Which we have done. In fact, Lightburn down at the Hunt Midwest is an example of that. I think that was an $80 million incentive. But more, I think what is more relevant is the proposed 587 project. For those who may not understand, 587 is the sum of 435 and 152 highways. There is a large tract of land there which is being considered for development. It would result in a lot of economic activity. It would involve a lot of construction. Clearly, right now it is green fields for the most part. So we're talking about a lot of work if that large tract of land was developed. One of the things that has been suggested, and I neither advocate or take off the table, is the recommendation that Clay County issue Chapter 100 bonds. If we were to go down that road, if we saw that project as being in the best interest of our citizens and economic growth, and we participated with Chapter 100 bonds, we would then I don't know how we segregate out where our money goes, maybe we can, but would we then be responsible for the compliance of dozens of companies and vendors and subcontractors and thousands, I suspect, of workers, would we be then have to go around and make sure that each one of those was in compliance? If so, the cost to the county would be horrendous, and in effect, on jobs like that, on a project like that, that precludes the county from participating. And the fact that we would not be able to participate would mean that we had virtually no say in the development of some large tract of land within our county. So if we were to go forward with that, and if the commission were to decide that Chapter 100 bonds was necessary to make that project go forward, because projects like this don't just happen, they usually piece together, as I'm sure you realize. If it could easily make the difference of whether this project would go forward, which would be a pretty massive, by Northland standards, a pretty massive construction project. In the absence of Chapter 100 bonds from the county, would we then not be able to participate in something like this? Because you're talking about a pretty substantial cost to the county to do compliance checks on there. And I don't think this is the kind of a thing that we could job out, that we could basically let another political subdivision do and say, yeah, what you did there. This is since we are putting out rather severe penalties, we have to be the ones who are doing the checking on this, because it is only right. If I'm going to use an ordinance to penalize somebody, I better have my ducks in a row, I better have my documentation set up, and all that takes a considerable amount of staff time if we're talking about a project of any size whatsoever.
So a couple things. First, on the pretty severe penalties suggestion, I'll read what the ordinance says. I don't think it's severe at all. It says, any bidder or subcontractor that willfully makes or willfully causes to be made a false, deceptive, or fraudulent statement, or willfully submits false, deceptive, or fraudulent information in connection with any submission that's in the bid process made to the county, shall be disqualified from bidding or working on all county projects for a period of 3 years. So the punishment for fraud is that you don't get to apply to do our jobs anymore. I don't think that's a especially severe penalty. I think that's
However, if we
the
were
minimal
going
penalty.
to accuse somebody of fraud, because if we're going to invoke that means we have to accuse them of fraud. And if we're going to accuse somebody of fraud, would be a crime, I believe. If we're going to accuse somebody of a crime, we better be pretty sure about where we're going with that, and we better have our evidence set up.
Well, I don't know if county council wants to take that one. We wouldn't be pursuing criminal charges. We would preclude them from bidding on county projects.
Why would we not pursue criminal charges against somebody who defrauded the county?
The ordinance doesn't set out that we pursue criminal charges against them. If you'd like to add that in, I'm actually open to that. That was part of not reaching too far with this, was not having penalty provisions that are too robust. Frankly, I do think if a contractor engages in fraud and says they're giving health insurance or they're paying prevailing wage and they're actually lying to us, yeah, sure, I support going after them criminally. This ordinance doesn't do that. It only says they don't get to bid.
Notwithstanding the ordinance, fraud is a crime.
It is.
So whether or not this passes or does not pass, if somebody is defrauding the county, we should not hesitate, assuming we have the sufficient proof to go forward.
If the relevant law enforcement agencies wanted to take that up, they would certainly be able to do so. The ordinance doesn't call for that to happen. In terms of, well, now I've lost my train of thought. Other than the penalties, your additional concern was? The 587 plan, yes, thank you. So,
Yes.
Look, anytime you have a specific development project, we as the county commission, if we want to create a carve-out for that specific one, we will have the full ability to do so. So if a commissioner, you or any other commissioner says, look, this is a really important project and we shouldn't enforce this on this project, we shouldn't pay prevailing wage or what have you, anybody can offer that at any time. Nothing in this ordinance would preclude that from happening. And it's my view that if we're going to engage in tax abatements, that we should require folks to meet certain standards of pay and benefits.
I disagree with you from the point of view of we should, if we're going to have an ordinance like this, we shouldn't go into this with the public statement that we will waive it for the big guys.
No, I agree, let's not. I'm saying if a commissioner wants to propose doing so, that discussion can be had at that time. I agree, let's not waive it for the big guys.
Okay, because that kind of sounded like where you were going with that.
No,
And I would not.
I'm simply saying we as a commission can pass any future ordinance that we want. So if it's not working, or it's gonna hurt some project, or the new commissioners come on and decide they don't want to do it, there's nothing about passing this that would prevent us from changing course in the future. I think it's gonna work great, I think it's gonna be great for workers, and I look forward to seeing it implemented. But like I said, there is no reason it can't be changed in the future if a majority of the commission votes to do so.
Well, since we already engage in prevailing wage, what problem are we solving? Can you point to a specific project or a specific development or a specific vendor and say, this is why? Because often when a proposal is made of this sort, it's because a specific problem surfaced, and it's like, here's a problem, and we don't want this to happen again.
I'll give you the specific problem. For decades, we've seen a transfer of wealth from working people to the richest people in this country. And anytime we have the ability, through smart and conscientious public policy, to support the working men and women of this country by making sure that they have safe working conditions and pay and benefits that they deserve, I think that's a good thing. So that's the problem, in my view, that we're addressing by passing this today.
No, I'm sorry, let me clarify. I'm saying a specific instance of that problem. In other words, company X did this, and this is an abuse that we have to stop. So that's what I'm interested in. It's not so much the
Sure.
overall philosophical point, although that is important. I'm interested in, if we're solving a problem, what is the problem, and what is the problem specifically, and what are the dimensions of the problem?
Absolutely. Well, yeah.
As it applies to Clay County, because
I-
this ordinance applies, as you mentioned, strictly to Clay County. So is there a Clay County example where someone has done something along those lines that you see as being requiring this particular ordinance?
What I'll say is that the wealth and power disparity that has grown over the course of decades affects workers right here in Clay County, absolutely. And so by passing an initiative that helps workers, we're helping to address a real problem in Clay County, just like it's a problem across the country. Now, in terms of specific contractors who are abusing their workers, who aren't paying them fairly, who are bringing in illegal labor, who aren't meeting safety standards, is that a thing that happens? Heck yeah, that's a thing that happens. In fact, I think we're going to have folks here today who are workers who can talk about jobs that they've worked on where that's happened. And I think creating more rules of the road to weed out unscrupulous contractors is a good thing.
There are what I would like to think pretty strenuous state law prohibiting, in addition to the federal law prohibiting persons illegally present in the United States from working. And if someone is aware, there is a reporting mechanism that needs to be followed. If we as commissioners are aware of that kind of illegal activity happening, it is incumbent upon us to report that. And I can tell you that the immigration laws related to workers is strenuous, and the reason I know that is I wrote it.
Commissioner, I don't mean to take us down a conversation around illegal immigration. That was one of many things that I listed. Contractors do all kinds of things that are not good for their workers. And the point of this is to weed those out and make sure we get the companies involved that want to treat their workers well, and that's who we're going to give our taxpayer dollars to. This is a statement that's saying, look, we as a county commission, we've got an almost $150 million budget. We're going to use those dollars to support companies that support their workers, and we're not going to hire the ones that don't.
And as I said, because you had mentioned illegal immigrant workers, that's why I brought it up. I would not have brought it up had you not raised the issue. But those protections are in place. There's a mechanism to report it, and the penalties for companies that do that are substantial, and they end up being not a 3-year moratorium from working in the county. They are banned. And the first offense on that is for a company who does knowingly hire someone illegally in this country. For the first offense, it is 1 month of having all permits and other paperwork pulled. They have no more occupational permits. They're out of business for a month. The second one, a longer period. The third offense, it is a permanent ban from doing business in the state of Missouri. So I don't see this as anything that is more strenuous than that. So on that particular issue that you brought up of illegal immigration, this is irrelevant compared to the penalties that
Then we can leave it out of the conversation. That's fine. My point of including it was that there is a laundry list of abuses that contractors can engage in. That is one of them. I think by weeding out unscrupulous contractors, we're going to do a good job of also weeding out the ones who might engage in that behavior.
Can you name an unscrupulous contractor in this county?
Well, Commissioner, I'm obviously not going to do that. So,
But the thing is there?
You've already, we had a commissioner who addressed an incident that happened in this county in which there was loss of life, and you admonished.
I would caution you again, Counselor. Could you advise us on this point?
Well, yes, but that's my point. I'm restating your point, which is you admonished Commissioner Thompson from going there, and I haven't gone there. I'm not going to. But now you're asking me to list who the bad contractors might be. No, of course I'm not going to do that for the same reasons that you suggested before.
Well, something that is not isn't potentially under current litigation, because what that does is it damages the position of the county and potentially damages the ability for that person to get justice.
So let's not start naming contractors at the commission.
Beyond someone who is not under current litigation, if there are unscrupulous, and if you don't want to mention them in public, I get that. Have you passed that on to the administrator or to purchasing? Because I don't want us to do business with unscrupulous people. If you know them, we need, even if it's in a confidential setting, we need to understand who those individuals are.
Commissioner, what I propose is that we pass the ordinance which says that if they've been suspended by the state or federal government in the last year, they cannot qualify. If they can't demonstrate that they've met a number of requirements, like being sufficiently OSHA certified, they cannot qualify. So that is the way we go about achieving, weeding out the bad actors. And I think it's a good thing. If you think that those aren't good changes, then of course everybody has the right to vote how they, that their conscience dictates.
But the way that we construct good changes, and I don't want unscrupulous people working for the county, but the way that we construct an effective piece of legislation is by using examples of what it is. So we know specifically that Company X was doing this particular abuse. Therefore, we will pass a law that will make that more difficult for that to happen. But we have to know what those specific abuses are, not just a general injustice.
Those abuses are things like not paying their workers enough, not providing health care, not having adequate safety protocols in place, which is what the ordinance addresses. Look, that's a problem that happens here in Clay County. It happens in Jackson County. It happens across the state. It happens across the country. Workers will be happy to share with you their experience in that regard if you'd like to listen. We heard actually significant testimony last week from a gentleman who goes from worksite to worksite who detailed all kinds of abuses that he's seen over the course of his years doing that work. It's not, this addresses a whole group of things, and I think will be a good thing for the working men and women on these projects. And I think it's as simple as that. We can either demand that people who bid on public projects meet these criteria, that they pay their workers adequately, that they provide benefits, and that they meet safety standards, or we cannot require that of them. That's the debate today. I have my perspective on it, and like I said, I look forward to hearing from the folks who are here.
Very good. Commissioner Thompson, I didn't want to apologize if I kind of left you out of the discussion. Would you like to address any of the issues, and then we will go to the individuals who are here. Do you have any issues that you would like to raise or discuss that we brought up here that you would like to expand upon on your thoughts?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. There was quite a lot discussed over there as I was over here in the
Yes.
corner. So I will go ahead and try to jump in and fill in some of those blanks as best that I can from my perspective. So how I see it is, I'll start at the beginning here, that this was a working document. I know that we all can't sit down as commissioners together and have a conversation about these, but I know that this document, and this is why it has changed, because it has went from numerous staff, county administrator, county counselor, budgeting people, everybody has been through the whole gamut of it, and we've crafted something here for Clay County that's going to keep everybody safe. And this is going to continue. If we need to make any changes, we're going to be able to have the ability to do that. We're not locked into this as something is set in stone. And that is why when this is all said and done today, I would really love to see this. When I was going to see if we can direct staff to see if we could put this on the first meeting in January with our full commission, because I want this to be as transparent as possible. And this has gone through the normal process of any ordinance or any other thing we have done within the county. We have changed ordinances numerous times this year that have been passed, and then we bring back up, and then we've changed things. We just switched around our whole agenda. We've moved things around. This should not be controversial, and we are utilizing portions of this, of prevailing wage. We do this now in Missouri and in Clay County with our road and bridge projects.
If we
This
do
is
it
no-
now, then
with our road and bridge projects. So this will only affect those 2 or 3 projects that we've heard from staff that's going to give that safety that we need here in Clay County. So this isn't extreme. This isn't earth-shattering. This is just making quality of life for people here in Clay County. That's where I stand with this. I know we talked a little bit about, you asked about where some of this money is going to come from a budgeting standpoint. This is a perfect time to talk about this. We're headed into budget. We have not passed the budget. We all have a budget book. There's numerous things I found in the budget I think are frivolous spending that we could probably go ahead and talk about cutting out. One thing I know that we don't need, $30,000 on a commission retreat. I don't need a $30,000 commission vacation to talk to you guys. I'll go down the hallway and make you a cup of coffee and bring some cake and we'll talk in my office. Not a big deal. And also, we do work here in the county. We do work every day in the county. We do meetings every week. I don't sit on my hands in December. We've been working on this document. It's gone through the vetting process. We have a good ordinance put in place to move forward with to protect our community. I'm not going to sit on it when we can move forward and make great things happen here in Clay County, because I have a job to do. I took an oath to protect our county and do what I need to do. But can we continue to have conversations and when we need tweaking? And yes, we can.
well, why don't we do it right the first time?
I think
As
this
much
is
as we
pretty
can.
good.
And the thing is, from my point of view, having 24 hours to go through this, I do recognize we can go back and change it, but why don't we just take our time and do it correctly the first time rather than have to go through and redo it and redo it and redo it? Let's sit down and have everybody involved in the conversation, because my involvement has been, I don't know what kind of conversations you guys have been having. I've had very, very limited conversations because I'm a little bit out of the loop on this thing. Like I say, getting the actual language of this ordinance yesterday did not give me time. Commissioner Carpenter and I were just talking about the situation in Kansas City. I am sort of aware of it, but I am not really. Does it apply to this or does it not? I really don't know. And the thing is, if there are enough questions and we don't know the answers to, I think we should do it right the first time and get it right the first time. And your idea of maybe putting it up, for January. But the thing is, once it's passed, it is very difficult. You've already got it kind of etched in stone. Plus, this is scheduled to become effective January 1. So when we've got people bidding on things, and they're doing it based on an ordinance that becomes activated on January 1, and they're bidding on something, say, with a February 1 deadline, and we're finagling around with the requirements, how do they know exactly what to bid? Because now we've given them a moving target. In my estimation, there's a lot of negative things that government can do when it comes to dealing with economic development and businesses. We can overtax, we can overregulate, we can do a lot of things that have a destructive effect. But top of the list, as far as what we can do that is destructive for economic development and job creation, is uncertainty. We need to be able to get it right to the best of our ability. We're only human. We need to get it right the first time. And then we need to have it there. And there has to be a certainty that when somebody bids on a project, the rules on January 10th are going to be pretty much the same as the rules on February 10th. Otherwise, how do you bid on that? That puts so much unknown in there that we cannot really I don't see how anybody can bid on that. Myself, as someone who's had a number of small businesses, to tell you the truth, if this were in place, I wouldn't bother. I couldn't keep up with the paperwork. I would have a lot of concerns about how it would play out. And if I didn't know if the rules were going to be the same next week as they are this week, I'm just going to take a pass on it because I can't deal with that kind of uncertainty. So we need to get it right the first time, however it turns out. My concern on this is obviously what it says. That's certainly a concern that I have. But another concern I have is it's got to be something that people can plan on. So if somebody submits a bid, we can't then have them come back to us and say, oh, we didn't know you had extra provisos to put on there. Now we've got to reconfigure our bid. We've got to do it right the first time, and it has to stay in place for some period of time so that there is some stability in the bidding process. Otherwise, quite honestly, it would be the only people that would be able to bid on projects would be the very large ones who could keep up with us because they have a staff. You're knocking out all the medium and small businesses from the ability to bid on county work. And like I say, it's additional regulation, in my experience, has always fallen more harshly on the small and medium-sized businesses. The big guys have got deep pockets and they can skate on some of this stuff, and they can use their money. And I'm not objecting to that. I'm just saying there is an inherent unfair advantage that over-regulation, or that regulations that are not clear and consistent cut more heavily against small and medium-sized businesses. I'll let you go ahead and have the last bit. I didn't mean to go off on a tirade. I'm sorry.
No worries. I was going to just kind of help address some of those concerns there. So I'm glad you said that nobody is perfect, and I think you would know this as well, that there's, well, not a person, but there's no piece of legislation or bill that's going to be perfect. There is never. We're not those people. We're not going to make the perfect bill. Is this a really great starting point? Yes, it is. Are we always able to come back and tweak it if we need to? Yes. And if it makes everybody more comfortable, I'm happy to make an amendment saying that we can put these into effect, say, like January the 15th. So that would give us time to get through the first meeting after a discussion item. And if any of our commissioners have issues with this, we could make tweaks. We can have a conversation about this. I can't sit and wait to keep our community safe. These are safety precautions. This is taking care of our workers. Nothing is going to be perfect, Commissioner, and you know this. And that's why we constantly bring back up issues and we go over them and we tweak them. This is nothing unusual even within county government.
Your point is well taken in that in the process, again, I don't mean to harken back too much to Jeff City days, but in those days I would propose a piece of legislation. It would go through multiple committee processes, go through a House process, and then, God help us, go to the Senate, and have to go through that process. And what it did was it took out some of the things that were problematic. Some of the unintended consequences were caught in that process. And while it was somewhat arduous and it took months and months, what we ended up with was something that was a more solid piece of legislation. I would just end this by saying, you know, when I first got here, there was a degree of turmoil, and you came in at the same time. One of the things that I used to say, and it probably is something I should say more often, is this: none of us are perfect. However, if I manage to achieve perfection, I will certainly send out a memo to that effect, and everyone will behave appropriately. Until that time, let's forgive each other a little bit. Let's be patient with one another. Before we go to comments, I want to, because this is Commissioner Carpenter's initiative, if you could just give us a couple more comments, and then we'll go ahead and go to witnesses.
I'm ready for the witnesses.
Very good.
Thank you.
By the way, please line up, and like I say, I'm just going to I'm just going to review one more time. Make sure that the green light is on the stem. Please speak into the microphone. Please identify yourself, because we do have audio recordings. That way we know who we're speaking to, and it makes it a little more folksy if I can call you by name. So just go ahead and on that basis, and please just queue up. It helps when you queue up, because that way I can also get a sense for how many folks are left who are still interested to speak. So please go right ahead.
Thank you so much for the recognition. I just wanted to bring you a statement from Manny Abarca, who's the Executive Director of Fair Contracting Alliance. I think you got the opportunity last week to hear much of his testimony where he highlighted a lot of projects, both in Clay County and in the greater area, that there have been bad actors, whether it's not paying the proper wages, whether it's not taking the proper safety measures. And those are concerns that Fair Contracting obviously has. And unfortunately, Manny had to be at a public school board meeting this evening in Kansas City, so he could not be here right now. So I'll go ahead and read the statement. It says, "It is with the utmost importance that I again advocate for the expansive protections outlined in this ordinance for construction workers. The very clear and present dangers of the construction trade lend themselves to workplace injuries that can be catastrophic, if not deadly, and the Commission has a responsibility to act. Given the recent death and serious injury of several construction workers here in the county on a bridge project, it's proof enough that greater protections are needed to prevent such situations from occurring in the future. By requiring responsible bidder on county projects, you instill a level of competency and fairness within your process, and it will trickle down to the workers on site. Requiring all contractors conducting county or work on behalf of the taxpayers, you ensure that the burden of hurt workers is sheltered from taxpayer expense and instead offers competitive benefits for workers on your projects. Requiring all employees and supervisors to have completed OSHA training, specifically OSHA 30 for supervisors and OSHA 10 for workers on site, it is critical to eliminating oversights that can lead to serious injury or death on site. And finally, ensuring that all projects are funded by county tax dollars now or in the future offers a level playing field to those who bid on contracts. It requires e-verifiable processes to eliminate underbidding by utilizing an undocumented and often exploited workforce by bad acting contractors. By establishing a clear, responsible bidding and wage program, you ensure a higher standard of quality of work, and it is because of these reasons that I advocate for approval of this measure." And once again, that was a statement from Manny Abarca with Fair Contracting Alliance. I also just want to add that, in the testimony, I appreciate the concern for the small business. I was disappointed to hear the concern for worker safety for the workers that are standing in this room. They're the men and women that go out on the work site day in and day out, working on the roads, working on your buildings, and they put themselves at risk every single day. So while I appreciate the concern for small businesses, it would be well received to, I think, your audience and your constituents in the county to care about their well-being as well. So thank you.
Thank you. By the way, just for the sake of moving along, generally speaking, I would ask the commissioners if they have any questions or comments of the speaker. At this point, I'm not going to do that. Just give me a high sign, try to get my attention. The only comment I would make on the last gentleman's comments was that the E-Verify, we have the sign downstairs. That is a direct response to the legislation that I sponsored and passed when it was in the Missouri House, because you're right, there is that is something that needed to be done. So yes, I am well aware of that because my legislation requires that now.
Well, thank you.
Sir.
My name is Bill Allen, and although I'm a representative-elect for District 17, I'm here only as a citizen of Clay County. Commissioners, you do good work, and I want to thank you for your service. What you do is difficult, and there isn't an easy solution to any of these things. Although you mentioned many concerns, all of you have, but I want to remind you that as commissioners, it's really not about your opinion. This is a government by and for the people, and I hope that you'll listen to all the people that are here tonight. My first point is that I'm a PhD by trade, and I searched really hard. I could find not a single nonpartisan research that indicated prevailing wage and safety are causation and correlated. There may be some correlation, but there is not causation to this, and it's not fair to say that there is unless you have research proving otherwise. Second, there is no hurry here. Incoming commissioners deserve what voters asked, and that is to hear their voice. 7 eyes on this versus 3 is preferable. And frankly, this legislation changed, or this ordinance changed, and it should be reviewed, given time for review. And third, this is the government putting hands on the scale of small versus large business. There is no other explanation for this. Worker safety, we all agree on. It's critically important. OSHA performs that function. We do not want or at least half the citizens of this county, do not want or need more government intervention in this. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
Bob Nance, Wallace Avenue. What I'm here, and I heard the former legislators talking about things, and some of the things I will say, maybe I've already heard, but I want to be quick on that. And that was when in the legislature, like you, there were 10 people vetting a bill, and it probably would take 10 weeks for them to get it right. And even then, it was questionable. But the longer, if you put this off till January, that'd be very important. But one of the things that you would say is who prepared it, their influence and reasoning, answering questions like why. And I know we've been through a few of those. Has our county, another one, has our county actually spoke to someone that implemented this and the ramifications? And I didn't hear any answers for that. Something else, I heard that there were 3 to 5 projects that were over $75,000 that would be in this. And maybe I have the wrong ordinance here, but my question would be, when we did the James Farm for $100,000 and we did this, was that prevailing wage? Do we know an answer for that?
I could inquire of our administrator. By the way, I believe the budget for this particular room is something like, I will defer to the
And
administrator.
their offices too, maybe they were separate.
Administrator, would you like to address that question?
I will to my best of my ability. I can't answer the James Farm project. I wasn't here. But I do know in conversations with Deputy County Administrator Kuntz on this particular project that was bid for here in the offices as part of the contract, it's over 75. It was prevailing wage.
Okay, and I have many, like I said, the number 3 to 5 was used, and I have a sheet, 2 sheets of different projects we did over the last couple of years that were more expensive. Another question is we gave money to some of the cities, $800,000, $1.1 million. Now, since they got that money, obviously they're going to go according to Missouri law, but does this mean they are going to be required to give us their information also? And we'll have somebody check that. That is something I would like to know. TIF projects, you know, and you could go with the 800 to 1.1 million we gave to cities. If they aren't required to do it, then we also give money to TIF projects. Are they basically the same grouping? And I think that needs to be decided. Another spot in there, originally anyway, had for every journeyman, there could only be 1 non-journeyman. And my question is this standard in the industry, or normally would it be 1 journeyman to 3 non-journeymen? And there too, that's could take the expenses up. But I thank you for listening, and I appreciate the work you do.
Thank you very much. By the way, I just want to point, that's okay, I was just going to point out I was going to make a general point. By the way, I am keeping an eye on the clock. However, if someone asks a question as this witness has, and I defer to staff to answer it, I'm not going to take that out of your 3 minutes just in case there's any concerns about that. So I want you to have your full 3 minutes if that is what you would care to expend. Next person, please.
Commissioners, Scott Kelly. I live in Kearney, Missouri. Ordinance 2022-43 is unneeded regulation. Federal and state.
Excuse me, could you speak a little more into the mic?
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Do I get the extra 10 seconds? No.
Certainly.
Ordinance 2022-43 is unneeded regulation. Federal and state funded construction in Clay County is already covered by prevailing wage law. This ordinance attempts to expand this competition limiting regulations to private sector development through its connection with any county tax abatement or incentives referred to as incentivizing vehicles. Forcing prevailing wage on private development will only serve to push development to places like Kansas or China, costing Missouri jobs and deflating the county's tax base. No economic study has been presented to forecast the expense to this county to administer this ordinance, but it would be feasible to predict that an entire department would be needed to be established, like in Jackson County, whose budget for 2023 is $455,000, to enforce this ordinance with prevailing wage, safety compliance officers, and administration employees. If federal public law 111-148, or Obamacare, already mandates certain employers provide health care coverage, why does this prevailing wage ordinance call for expansion of this and its administrative burden and cost on county and its employers? This document calls for all employees to be licensed. Licensed by what entity? The author of this document? It's to control who works on these projects to the exclusion of otherwise qualified workers who haven't paid dues to said entity. I have an OSHA 30 card. OSHA does not certify workers or anything else, so the author is uninformed. Why are safety regulations in a prevailing wage ordinance when they belong in the project contract documents? Speaking of the author, let's get down to the smell test. Who is the author of this ordinance? Not the presenter or introducer, but the author. And who does he work for, and who does he represent? And who is the working group mentioned to construct this ordinance? Hopefully this group is subject to the sunshine laws of this state. I know this commission is. Do these folks pay prevailing wage getting work done on their houses? Answer these questions and you'll see who benefits, and it won't be the citizens of Clay County. One final word. Never let a crisis or tragedy, in this case, go to waste. Thank you.
Next person, please.
Good evening, members of the Commission. Scott Wagner. I will be joining you shortly, but I thought I'd just tell you what I think now, for however that may be helpful to you, because if it does get pushed off to January, I'll tell you exactly the same thing. First, a little bit of housekeeping, I suppose, in case someone wants to bring up my history. I come from a union family. My dad worked 29 years as an iron worker. I got braces, had food on the table, and had a future because of that. Does that matter in this discussion? No. And why it doesn't matter is because what we are talking about is not about prevailing wage, because this is not a prevailing wage ordinance. This is a responsible bidder ordinance. This is the values that you set to say, here is who we want, or the type of contractor we want to work on our projects. Prevailing wage is an aspect of it, yup. But if you only were to look at prevailing wage, then that long list that you have in section 2 that has about 7 different items on it, 6 of them get ignored. One of those has to do with this issue of safety, and I don't mean to disagree with any other speaker that's been here, but it seems to me that one of the first steps in understanding safety in your work environment is going through OSHA training. Part of the pre-apprenticeship work that is being done at KCI and has been done in KCI has been about OSHA training to get people, union or non-union, into apprenticeship programs. You wanted to ask who's done this sort of thing before? There's a big $2 billion project that has been doing exactly what has been talked about here. I know there have been some changes, and I understand that people do not like the fact that those changes have been sprung. I found out myself when I came in here today that there were changes, so I feel your pain, Mr. Presiding Commissioner. But nevertheless, they have been removals, not additions. And I might suggest to you that if you didn't like what was there before, look at what's gone now and see if that helps you. If it doesn't, then I'm not sure talking about it today or a month from now is going to make much difference. I would suggest to you that for those who say this is only a union thing, well, I know that unions bring this forward, and there's a reason why, because they deal with competition that doesn't do what they do. They don't do training, they don't do health insurance, and many times we have, and I will use my own city of Kansas City experience, we have contractors that come from other parts all over this country that know that maybe they can have an advantage. But if you can set that playing field level, then you give an opportunity for everyone to have the same benefit, not the least of which is to suggest that those who live here in our region have an opportunity to do the work that's going on in our region. There's been a lot of interest in this, and I understand why. But I must tell you, and Mr. Presiding Commissioner, you know I do some teaching, and this is finals week. And I've graded finals and spent till 1 a.m. yesterday evening to try to understand what is being asked of you and what potentially could be asked of us. As has been mentioned, there has been, there is prevailing wage already at $75,000. If you go into your transparency portal, that part of your website that I never thought I would thank the Show Me Institute for anything, however, what they did there was very helpful because I can see what this commission has spent its money on. I invite anybody to go look all the way back to 2013. This year, and you'll forgive me because I had to write this one down, $56.3 million has been spent on contracts over $75,000. That roughly makes about $56.3 million. Of those 65 contracts, only 5 deal with construction. And of that $4.674 million, $3.9 million of it is what you spent on asphalt at the airport and for 3 miles of road. That's it. I'm struggling to understand why we are having issues when, quite honestly, the size of the impact that we are talking about, quite honestly, is so little. Now, you may ask then, well, why is that a problem? Fair enough question. Why do we have to deal with it now? What I would suggest to you is that these are issues that, and conversations that will not only happen in Clay County, but I expect people to take this ordinance to other counties and other municipalities and have this very same discussion. Why does it matter to us now? I believe it is about sending the message regionally, because believe me, we've been through this, I've been through this many times where people look to see where it's easiest to get away with what you can. And if Clay County raises its hand to say, well, we actually have some standards, and these are our standards, that communicates one thing. If on the other hand, we say, you know what, it's not our problem, it's someone else's to deal with, that sends another message and invites those who may want to do something a little less, still within our ordinances, but a little bit less, to come here. I don't know if that's the message we want to send. Finally, since I can't resist it, Mr. Presiding Commissioner, I would just say, as we look at these big projects that we would like to do, both in the cities and in the counties, I would say that we would love to see big projects that may need to be incentivized come to Clay County, in the unincorporated part of the county. We want that development here. But having been through that rodeo a few times, and in the area of the 587, I can go back to 2011 on conversations there. A Chapter 100 is not going to be enough. Whoever comes forward will need the abatement for any other reason, whether it's TIF or otherwise, to build $10 million worth of road and grade that area on the southeast corner in order for it to be even developable. I don't say that to say that the county doesn't have a role in this. What I do wish to say is I don't want the prospect of maybe being what stops us from doing something that may be helpful and right. With that, I appreciate your time. Look forward to being on that side here in a couple of weeks, and if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
We'll certainly welcome you when you're here. And by the way, thank you for the reference to the $2 billion project down the street. I assume you're referring to the Ford plant.
Well, there's that. I'm talking about the one that's going to finish in March.
Okay, so you're a little more.
I didn't want to mention Platte County in that regard because I'm not sure you can in these chambers, but that would be the airport.
Where?
Yeah, exactly.
But no, you're right. The thing is, we want big projects here, and I was very happy to be the sponsor of the bill that created the incentives for the Ford plant to stay and
Absolutely.
expand.
And that is to your credit. Thank you.
Thank you. I see no other.
I appreciate it.
Look
Thank
forward
you.
to having you join us.
Thank you.
Next person, please.
What he said.
You mean you're going to be joining us too? I didn't realize.
Except that part. So, I'd like to ask a question about prevailing wage. What is required on your prevailing wage projects right now?
Commissioner Carpenter, you are kind of the sponsor of the bill, so I will let you take that.
Yeah, so as has been stated a few times, on public works projects over $75,000, we pay prevailing wage. That will continue to be the case. What we're doing here is adding to that a number of other items, like requiring that they provide health insurance, requiring that they meet a number of other criteria that we've discussed today.
And I'm all for that. My point being is prevailing wage projects are required to have OSHA 10 certified payroll and e-verification. That's it. That's all the protection you guys are offering. And a construction minimum. And going above and beyond that's too much to ask? Just the construction minimum.
I think it's good for us to know that this is not just prevailing wage, but that I think it's a positive thing to contrast what existing law is and what is being proposed.
And the existing law offers absolutely no safety protection. You can sit behind a computer and get an OSHA certified 10. That doesn't mean you have any job experience or safety experience on the job. You know, going above and beyond isn't a bad thing. And just to make your argument saying that we're going to go above prevailing wage laws is kind of a slap in the face to everyone who does work in this county. And I just wish you would actually reconsider your position. That's all I got.
Next person, please.
Good evening. My name's Grady Deshawn. I'm a taxpayer and a construction worker here in Clay County. You know, it's hard to envision being in a race to the bottom. And without these kind of protections, that's exactly what we're in. When you put production, productivity, and profit above safety, you get exactly what you got in Kearney. That's all I have.
Thank you. Next individual, please.
Commissioners, thank you. My name is Matt Nolker. I'm City Administrator for the City of Lawson. Once again, I'm here on behalf of my mayor. He's indisposed at this time. And once again, like I told you last time, he told me to take the gloves off. So here you go. I'm pretty blunt. Everybody that knows me
Please
knows that.
make sure you speak a little more directly into the microphone. Thank you, sir.
I can do that, sir. So the last time I was here, I spoke on Prop A. Spoke out against it. You passed it, you put it to a vote of the people, and the people spoke. They wanted to reduce restrictions on businesses. They wanted to reduce taxes and increase growth in our community by reducing that tax to match what Platte County has more closely. That was the exact language that I was given when I was here, because everything was about matching Clay County, or matching Platte County. That was a very big discussion that we had. Has anybody checked to see what Platte County's laws are on this? They don't have any. They have nothing on this. If you wanted to even the playing field for attracting businesses by reducing the taxes on our businesses, you are turning around and increasing the cost for developers to come in that want to get a county incentive. So you are doing the exact opposite of what you've already done and put to the vote of the people, which they approved. And that's what that was presented on, what it was pushed on, and what it was approved on. I'm very disappointed that we fiscally, what's the better word to look at, roto-rooted Prop A to death to find out what the impact was, but we can't take time and fiscally look at what this would do. As a city, I can't operate my budget without having a preparation of what something like this would do to my budget before I even present it to my council. That's my responsibility as a city administrator. And the idea that current staff will take what they're given in the bids and know that that's going to happen is ludicrous, because that is not what happens now. That is why we have to inspect prevailing wage pay stubs, I should say. My staff takes time doing that on all prevailing wage projects. At times, we even go out and interview the workers to see if that's really what they're getting paid. So you're going to have staff to mandate this. The other part of fiscal responsibility would be, what's the impact to developers and costs? What's the impact to cities around the county? I know you're talking about unincorporated Clay County, but it's still going to impact the cities. It's still going to impact the schools. It's going to impact everybody fiscally. If you were being very responsible with this, you would have reached out to another entity that has done this and seen what the impact was fiscally on them and what the impact on development was for them. I don't discount worker safety whatsoever. I ran a company for 12 years. I went 5 years without a lost time accident. It's a culture is what you have to build. It's not mandating stuff by law, by the county. And I'm getting tired of hearing this incident with the bridge in Clay County being brought up. That was a prevailing wage job, so I don't want to hear it anymore. That's prevailing wage job, guys. So let's quit using the opportunity of a catastrophe to push an agenda through. That's what this is. I have one more issue. Commissioner Carpenter, you kept referring to these as public projects. These are not public projects. These are private projects with a public incentive. If the county doesn't want to give the incentive because they're concerned about who's getting the job, then don't give the incentive. That's your controls. So I'm done, folks. I appreciate your time and I appreciate your work, commissioners. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next individual, please.
Hi, guys. So I'm Joanne Lawson, and I'm the Eastern Commissioner at Large elect. First of all, let me say right up front, I'm all for the prevailing wage. I like this document very much, and I see a great deal of merit in it. Here's my problem. I have some concerns. I feel that there are unknowns that I would like to discuss more closely, investigate more deeply. And to this last gentleman's concern, I would have liked to have seen this in operation somewhere. I don't care if it's in New York or Georgia or wherever it might be, but how had it impacted the county that it served? Was it valid? Did it cost a lot of money? You know, that's one of the things that is so important to all of us. We've got to learn to live within our budget, just like I do, you do. So we want to be cautious on that. I know I don't want to say no to this. I absolutely don't. But I'm saying that I respect all of you. I feel that you've all done a great job pulling this county out of the mess that it was in, and I respect you for that. But I would like to ask for your respect in the same vein, and I would like to give me the opportunity before you vote on this, for us to sit down as a commission and discuss it and come up with something that's fantastic, absolutely positively protects our workers, protects the county, and is fiscally responsible. I come from a very blue-collar background, so I know what it was like for my dad to go to work every day and what he did. He wasn't a lawyer, he wasn't a doctor, he was a worker. So I have great respect for that, and I want to see them get everything that is right for them, both safety, money, and all of the benefits. But I would very much like to have that opportunity to be involved in this decision. So I'm asking you for the same respect that were the situation reversed, I can promise you I would give you the opportunity. Thank you very much, and I look forward to joining y'all.
Thank you very much. Next person, please.
Hi, my name is Carrie Lonsdale. I'm a taxpayer, mom, veteran. This is my first meeting here, and the whole time that I listened to everybody speak, feels like I'm in a time warp where I'm back in school, and it's time for a test, and I was never able to have a study material guide to even study for the test. So not only are there unknowns as to how this is going to affect my pocket and everybody else that pays taxes, my big questions are if this is such an issue that nobody has any incidences, that it is an issue. I definitely want workers to be safe. The thing is, if it's a problem now, why has it not been addressed in the past, and why is it suddenly coming up? And why do I feel that there's a bonus at the end of the month, because this is such a rush? And I asked Jerry Nolte just tonight if there was a new form, because we got another one yesterday. So if this has changed from the last time that I have the original format, and it's considerably changing since the back and forth, the thing is, we don't have something in black and white. And I just want to say, as someone that's just getting involved in local politics, because I haven't been for the last 58 years of my life, we have a lot of people that are uneducated in this county, just like every other county, because people work for a living, they have kids, they raise families, they're tired at the end of the day, and they don't have time to sit here for 2 or 3 hours listening to politics go back and forth. Okay, so I will tell you, we are becoming more informed as a county. It's going to continue. So these plans that most of us know nothing about, that have been passed on a whim, that's great, but I feel the tide's changing, and I feel that people are going to be more talkative and more, shall I say, sharing and becoming more informed and making sure that this county is from us, because like somebody said before, we voted you guys in, and there's always new elections coming. So we are keeping very close eyes on what's done in our behalf, because we end up paying the bill. Nobody else pays the bill but the taxpayers. So, Mr. Commissioner, I truly respect, and I respect all of you. The thing is, it's our money. Thank you.
By the way, if anybody is coming up to speak twice, if as a courtesy, we would make sure anyone who has not spoken have the first opportunity, and then if someone has some follow-up comment, I'd like to make sure that everybody gets at least a first shot at the first bite of the apple, because we are running a bit late, and I want to make sure everybody has the opportunity to be heard who cares to speak. Sir?
My name is Jay Bossler. I'm from Kearney, Missouri. I moved up here in 2015 from Jackson County. I've worked construction basically my whole life, and I've worked non-union, I've worked union, and one specific spot that I remember, I was working on a job where we're doing trench work. I'm 8 feet down underground, and we don't have any trench boxes up because my boss said we didn't need them. Now, that's a safety issue, and that's what this bill is talking about. The prevailing wage is already there. Get that out of the way, because that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about safety, and we're talking about training. That's what we're talking about. And to you, Mr. Presiding Commissioner, I am one of those people that are working at that Ford plant that you helped keep here in Clay County, and we appreciate that. But what we also need is to make sure that we have safety rules that are going to benefit those same 8,000 employees at that big plant down there. And I'm here to talk for them and to tell you, we want this passed. Plain and simple, 100% by all of you, whether it's you 3 or all 7 of you. Because like this lady said back here, we do have some voting power. And 8,000 of us can go out and vote just like a single person can. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sir?
Good evening. Thank you for your time. My name is Chuck Roseborough. I'm a lifelong member of Clay County. I'm a member of the Pipe Fitters Local Union 533. I've been in the trade for 34 years. It's provided a wonderful life for my family. Our members go through a rigorous apprenticeship program where their skills are refined, and rigorous safety they go through that is learned so they can perform their duties, work a prosperous career, and eventually retire to a healthy retirement. I am in support of this, and hopefully you all consider passing it.
Thank you, sir. Is there any other individual who would like to speak for the first time?
Name's Bill Amador. I'm a member of Laborers, and I've been an instructor for 42 years. I've worked construction 42 years in the commercial industry. I wrote down a bunch of notes, if I can, get them in order. I think Missouri does have an OSHA 10 mandatory requirement now. And then another thing a couple of things I wrote is I've taught a lot of training classes to a lot of construction laborers, and like that gentleman was saying, a cubic foot of dirt weighs about 150 pounds, and when it falls down a trench and hits you, it's not 150 pounds anymore, it's about maybe 600 or 700 pounds. Fall protection, the fall doesn't kill you, it's a sudden stop, okay? And then I wrote down some things about training. When you have training, you have less accidents. And then safe worker is a productive worker. And then training, safety, production, you have quality. When you have quality, things last longer. That's the benefit to the county because you don't have to come back and do it. I get so frustrated with Kansas City, Missouri on these potholes. They do it poorly. I feel like going out there and working for free. Saw cutting them, taking out the loose material, put some sealer in there, put the asphalt, seal that, and you don't have to come back for a couple of years, but they just, put a little asphalt and it pops out, as soon as we get the freeze thaw cycle. But anyway, back to the training. In the construction industry, you have so many hazards, anything from wind coming up, you're setting some gang forms, the wind, you're on the wrong side, the wind blows you over. I worked on 2 jobs where 2 people lost their lives. One was New York Life Building downtown on 12th and Wyandotte, and then another one was Plaza West on the west side of the plaza. Both were falls. One gentleman fell 13 stories, the other one fell about 16 stories down an elevator shaft. But anyway, you also have things like beryllium, you have asbestos, you have lead, you have silica dust. There are so many things that a worker should be somewhat be aware of. And then, these people talk about, okay, we need to table this and, wait till all 7 of you are up there. Okay, well, how many people could die between now and the time the 7 of you get together? What is a life worth? Everybody in here has got a family, and you got somebody that loves you. And when I used to teach my classes, to me, safety is number one. It's over production, it's over quality, because if you don't have safety, you don't have nothing. And then when you got companies that have a lot of accidents, well, companies get lower premiums for less accidents, okay? So to me, the safety is so important. It's more important than anything. So I disagree with you tabling this, waiting, because, somebody could get hurt, like that gentleman when he said he was in an 8-foot trench, with no trench box or anything. If a heavy piece of equipment goes by and shakes the earth, that goes from, level A soil to level C soil just by the vibration, and he's buried. I mean, he's gone. And falls, trenches, then you got electrocution. I mean, there's all kinds of things. You got environmental things. But anyway, safety is so very critical. And like I said, everybody wants to go home with 2 eyes and 10 fingers and toes. Your lungs, you need them, to breathe the rest of your life from the silica dust. And when you got training, that, to me, that's over everything else, because everybody wants to go home the same way they went to work. Thank you very much. And congratulations on your elections, because I worked with a couple of you, 3-4 years ago. I see their pictures up there, and yeah, it was a tough ride, but you all are doing great. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who has not yet spoken before we allow people who have already spoken? Sir?
Yes, I'm Damon Miles. I've got 22 years working in the field of construction. I've been in the office for the last 3 at Local 264. And the number one thing I've learned about safety with the 22 years in the field is you start your morning with a safety meeting. And that safety meeting could be as simple as everybody sign this sheet and go to work. And then I've also been on construction sites where you had a safety meeting where they're going to discuss what you're going to do on the pipeline, what kind of ditches you're going to have, what kind of dangers, and you solve the problems. Safety, either you're reactive or proactive. This is your opportunity tonight to be proactive. Don't wait for something to happen and stand up here and make a decision. Tonight's the night to be proactive and protect the construction worker safety.
Is there anyone else who has not yet spoken who would care to address the commission? Very well, whoever would like to make a second comment, and please try to remain brief, we'll kind of round these off.
Wallace, and I threw out a couple questions and I forgot to get the answers. When we give money to these cities from ARPA, say 800,000, 1.1 million, does that mean they're going to have to go by this ordinance?
My understanding, and I will defer to staff on this, my understanding is it's federal money, and that might I'm not quite entirely sure. So
I'm happy to answer the question. So the ordinance, I mean, it applies to folks who are bidding on Clay County public construction projects. So that, of course, would not...
Only the counties, not the county city?
Only the county. This doesn't affect municipalities within Clay County and their public construction projects.
Okay. And
so there's that, and then also, this is only going to apply to future bids, right? So things that have taken place before the passage of the ordinance are not going to be affected by the ordinance. It will only apply to future projects.
Okay, and does this require TIF to do prevailing wage?
So if the county were to engage in a TIF, a tax abatement of some kind, then what this would say is that as part of that package, package that we give to a private developer, that we would require these criteria, such as prevailing wage, to be met. Now, what I will highlight again, which I've said a few times, Clay County does not have much history of engaging in tax abatements, TIFs, et cetera. So that's really more just a hypothetical forward-looking piece of the ordinance. The much more substantive piece of the ordinance is on Clay County governmental projects that are $75,000 and higher. They will, in addition to continuing to pay prevailing wage, are going to have to meet these safety requirements, healthcare requirements, and others as listed in the ordinance.
So if something was Liberty/Clay County TIF, how it wouldn't be
If Clay County gave some kind of tax abatement in unincorporated Clay County, then yes, there would need to be. Well, yeah, I mean, again, Clay County hasn't done that, right? So I'm not sure the fear around how that's going to impact Clay County doing tax abatements. It's just we don't have a history of doing that in Clay County. But if we do in the future, hypothetically, then yes, this would apply.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would care to speak before we round off the discussion?
I guess I'm not a true politician yet because I didn't jump at the chance of a microphone, but my name is Jay Johnson. I'm a commissioner-elect. I'll be on that side in a couple of weeks. I'll confess first, I've been a union member most of my adult life. Been part of a union dues-paid movement. I've actually been on the picket lines of unions several times, and my whole family were union members. Been on picket lines, paid our dues, very pro-union. Unions do a lot of very, very good things, and I'm very thankful for what unions did for me, my career, for my retirement. However, I've been elected to the commission. It's not my job to do the bidding or the commission's job to do the bidding for a union, any union. It's our job to do the bidding for the taxpayers. And there's a number of things that concern me about this. First of all, a number of people talked about the safety aspects of this, and let's call a spade a spade. Is this safety or is this prevailing wage? Because nothing in the title here, and it's up there for everybody to see, has anything to do with safety. It's about prevailing wage. If the concern is safety, let's draft an ordinance about safety. Let's do that. I'm all for that. I think everybody will be for that. I don't think I have any problems with anybody in this room if it's a safety ordinance. That's not what this is. This is under the guise of some safety things. We're throwing in some prevailing wage, some extra prevailing wage, and some benefits that are extra. And that's what concerns me. It's like, let's call it what it is. If it's safety, let's put a safety ordinance up, and let's craft a really good safety ordinance. But that's not what it is. And what I mean by bidding for the unions, let me tell you how prevailing wages actually are going to work and hurt some of us. And I'll give you just a very basic scenario in my mind, and please correct me if I'm wrong. But let's say I have an electrician business, and Commissioner Thompson has one, and Commissioner Carpenter. We all have electrician businesses, and to make it easy for numbers, I pay my electricians $10 an hour. Commissioner Thompson, $20 an hour. Commissioner Carpenter, $30 an hour. When it comes time to bid for a job for the county, well, I can't, because I only paid $10. So if you don't know, the prevailing wage in this scenario is $20 an hour. The prevailing wage is basically made up by what's the average in the market. So in this scenario, the prevailing wage is 20. So I can't bid on this job just because of what I pay. Forget anything else. And you have no idea why I'm paying that rate, but I just can't bid. I'm left out. I'm a smaller business, I'm left out. So only you two can bid. Well, I'll tell you what, next year I'm going to raise my wages. I'm going to match Commissioner Thompson. I'm going to pay $20 an hour in wages. Now, guess what? Commissioner Thompson and I, neither one of us can bid, because prevailing wage is no longer $20. It's now between $23 and $24 an hour, because it's the average, and it's going to go up. Prevailing wage continues to go up. So now, I can raise mine to $30 an hour, and if Commissioner Thompson goes to $30, we're all at $30 an hour. You raise yours to $31 an hour, and guess what? We can't compete, because we're below the average. That's how you end up doing the bidding for the unions. And it's brilliant by the unions, and I give them credit for that. But that's not the commissioner's job to do that. It's our job to take care of the taxpayer money. And it's very frustrating to hear people say, hey, this is about safety. No, it's not. It says right there in the title, requirement to pay prevailing wage. So let's keep those separate. Anything that we're adding to the already, by the way, several states, probably about a dozen or so states, have already repealed their prevailing wage laws because they didn't like it. And there's so many states out there show that some of them do cost more money. But if we're so concerned about prevailing wage, why don't we pay our own employees prevailing wage? Why are we so worried about our subcontractors and our contractors? Which, believe me, I want you guys to make good money, but let's talk about our own people. Our sheriff's deputies, there's no more dangerous job than our sheriff's deputies. I think all of you will agree with that. Our sheriff's deputies start at $19.75 an hour. $19.75, which is the absolute lowest in not only the county, but the entire region. That's not prevailing wage. We need to fix that. Let's clean up our own house. Let's deal with those issues first. We have a budget coming up that we have to deal with this next month. The new commissioners have a 500-page budget that we have to deal with next month that we're voting on. We need to deal with those things. See how that plays? We don't have a fiscal sheet on this. We don't know how this will impact us. If it's about safety, I'm all for it. Let's put together a great ordinance, and let's bring in the experts that know about safety in this field, in the fields of construction, electrician, plumbing, whatever it is. Let's bring the experts and put together a great ordinance that deals with safety. And let's leave the benefits and the wages up to the unions to fight for, because that's their job, not our job. That's all I know.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would wish to address the commission? Certainly.
Matt Nolker again, sorry. I just wanted to get some clarification from Commissioner Carpenter on the effects on local TIFs and CIDs and things like that, because your statement was, as long as the county's not engaged. Well, if I pass a TIF, the county's engaged. The county is giving us funds as a city through the TIF process.
Yeah, happy to answer it. So a municipality that engages in incentives is not impacted by this ordinance. And that is just the plain written language of the ordinance. I assure you that that's the case. I'm sure county council
I've
can.
read it 3 times now, and I cannot find that specific language anywhere in the ordinance.
What it says is that if the county engages in incentives, then those projects would be impacted.
Okay,
It does not
so-
impact municipal incentives, TIFs,
So
tax
not to
abatements.
be argumentative, but I've learned a few things from our attorneys. If engage isn't specifically given a definition in the ordinance, rule number 1 is you go to the dictionary. So I would assume, I haven't looked, I probably should have, that the definition we're going to get of engage is going to be take part in or be a party to. Well, the county's a party to every TIF and CID in the county, whether it's a city or county started TIF.
So let me just say, certainly my intent is what I've said it is, which is that, and so I'll.
Intent's great.
Absolutely, and
But
so
the
if.
language doesn't say that.
And so, well, I believe that it does, and if we've got a county councilor who could weigh in. I think.
So let me jump in. There are actually 2 points here that I want to focus on, one of which I was going to bring up when an opportunity came up. So there's the definition of incentivized project is what the ordinance talks about. And the key from that definition is it's a project for which the county has approved an incentive for such planned project or improvement. Not participated, I mean, there would be an affirmative vote of the county. It has to have an approval process. And then the other term, the other concept is incentive is defined. And it says economic value provided, authorized, or approved in any manner by the county. And on this one, to be honest, I think it's very clear that it comports with exactly what you're saying, that it would be only for county-led projects. But one suggestion I was going to make, just because I don't like the one word in here, and this is actually based on a conversation I had with an attorney this afternoon, because this is, again, conversations are always ongoing. Under the definition of incentive, I would like to remove the word provided. I don't think it needs to be, but I think it would be safer because of that very question, to make sure that it's very clear that we are not providing an incentive when we essentially participate with the city in helping them manage their TIF through our process of distributing funds.
Mr. Counselor, could you tell us what page you're on so that
I
we can adjust
apologize,
ours?
yes. It's page 2, the definition is incentive. I would respectfully request it at some point, if there is a motion, that you might consider just removing the word provided to provide as much clarity as possible that this is only applying to county-led projects, not to municipality-led projects.
And I think you raise a good point, because under current, the situation we are in currently, because of our population and because we are now a charter county.
That's
or
what I was going to
Constitution
ask
County,
next, because that
we-
changes it.
I don't know that it changes it, but it does change the county's participation. Previously, we would, in the case of a municipal, a TIF commission, we would appoint, I think, 2 people. Now we would appoint 6, which is, it's not a majority, but it is half.
It's half, and that was my next
Does
question.
that make it, the question would be, does that make it a creature of the county?
That's
don't-
my question. If the county is appointing 6 members to the TIF commission, they are approving that TIF by
They're not.
appointing those
They're
members?
not. Absolutely not. It is not our TIF commission. We have our own TIF commission. That absolutely would not be our TIF commission. If it's a city's TIF commission, we may help populate its membership, but it is that city's TIF commission.
Because at that point, you have half the commission. And this is going to be a
That
very
does not
gray.
matter. That does not matter.
Every attorney I've talked to at this point, that's an area of concern with TIFs going forward, is this change to having 6 county-appointed members.
Oh, I don't doubt that it's an area of concern for the cities, but it doesn't change the dynamic that it is in fact still the city's TIF. If I were in the city, I probably wouldn't like the county populating my TIF commission, but that's a different discussion than it becoming a county TIF commission. It is not a county TIF commission.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next individual, please.
apparently I'm getting a bad habit, Mr. Presiding Commissioner, but I do want to speak to that point because as someone who served on the Kansas City Council for 8 years, many people have accused me of spending other people's money. So I seem to have a little bit of expertise to that. And I would agree with the county councilor because the TIF commission, any TIF commission, operates as an advisory body. It is the legislative body that ultimately activates the incentive. So whether you are in Kansas City, whether you are in Gladstone, there are certainly members of the county that participate in that commission, but it is the legislative body that actually votes to activate it. And that just goes back to TIF statute and all of that. So to some degree, you got to go to what the state law says, who has responsibility where, but in these roles we're talking about, they're only advisory without that power of state law behind it. So just
With all due respect to the gentleman who spoke, I agree with your interpretation. I've served on TIF commissions for some time now, and I think the county councilor is correct in his assessment. I think that there were still good points raised by the gentleman, but on that particular one, I wanted to raise that just because it seemed like something relevant to at least have out there so that there would be no concern, no doubt that it was something that was a fact, was how those memberships were, so that everybody is clear. While we may have half the members appointed, it is still a municipal. For instance, we are here in Liberty. We have 6 members of the Liberty TIF Commission. That is still the Liberty TIF Commission. We have influence. There's no doubt about it.
Right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Victor Hilbert, Clay County Auditor. I just want to ask some points of clarification. So whatever the commission, passes or eventually gets, delayed in the next year, I do think, as county auditor, I'm going to, seek to have compliance for whatever you pass. And so I want to be very interested, to have some influence in how this is written so that I understand what I'm, checking for compliance. And then also, at least, as it's presently stated, to know that if it does, in fact, move as it is. And so I want to really drill down because we've thrown around a lot of terms about safety and prevailing wage. And, a lot of prevailing wage already falls with the Department of Labor in the state of Missouri. And OSHA is of course, its own entity. But I want to specifically focus on the healthcare provision. And this is in Section 2. Subpoint C, and I believe it references the Affordable Care Act as far as the provisions for requiring health insurance. And so I just want to be very clear, if this passes, is this requiring all employers to provide health insurance of some form, or is it to essentially meet those current provisions of healthcare of the Affordable Care Act? Because I believe there's a threshold of 50 employees where you have that, option for individuals on the marketplace. So I'm curious about that. I do think this, I've been trying to really think about this as far as what impact it would have on my office. I am still a little uncertain. I think I would have interest in doing a lot of posts besides the procurement check to ensure compliance on the back end as well as a project occurs. I'm not sure if I have the man hours capability to do that with current staff, but I would still, just given my duty and oath, have interest in doing that. But I want to, for the purposes of today, I know it's late, just focus on just that question.
Something that you bring up, I think, is a good one, and the gentleman from Lawson brought up the same point, and that is, what about compliance? What is it we're checking for? If we were to take what we're talking about right now and we were to put it in a construction kind of example, if the county said, we need to build a road. Cool. Yes, we do need a road. It's going to be over there, or maybe over there. We're not sure. And you know what? We'll go ahead and pass it to be over there, but we might change the road and put it over here instead. That's the position we seem to be finding ourselves in to some extent. When you assign somebody to do construction work, you say, we want a road, we want it here, and you have specs and you have the rules of the road that you have to follow. Now, as that relates to yourself, and I think that what you're getting at, which is lowercase c on page 5, Yeah, well, exactly what it is are we laying on you as a task? Do you have the number of employees to perform that task? And if you do not, you need to be able to give us some idea of, okay, I'll need one extra person, or I'll need half of an FTE, half of a full-time employee, I'll need 20 hours to do that. And I don't know how we budget unless we can tell you, here's what we're going to task you with, and then you need to tell us, am I kind of following on the right line of where you're going? Not to mention the fact that, as you say, Obamacare is certainly prescribed, and I'm not sure if we're going beyond the bounds of what is prescribed by federal law, but I was just kind of trying to get some clarification, so if you could go ahead and maybe pick it up from there and continue. your
Sure, I
point.
mean, I do, I think so. I think we've heard discussion about examples of other entities and how they go about, ensuring compliance on. All right, we're all good? Okay. About ensuring compliance on the back end. So maybe I shouldn't have moved it.
Okay, try it one more time.
All right, so I'm just wondering,
Can we,
how's that?
go ahead and just speak
I'll
loudly
just talk,
from that distance, and I think we'll all be able to hear as long as you're speaking loudly.
Yeah, so, I'm really just wondering, because, if you think about it, someone can, say they provide insurance at one point, and then, a month into the job, cut it, and, who's going to go through and work that, and check for that if something like this passes, and so I'm trying to get a sense of, we heard about Jackson County, $500,000, just the type of staffing and gathering that private data information from these employers. So a lot of questions, and again, whatever passes, I'll make sure it happens. But that's just what I'm trying to figure out.
I guess Commissioner Carpenter.
Happy to address it. So again, the operationally, this is going to happen at the front end, right? This is going to happen at the bid process. They're going to provide documentation, for example, that they meet health care standards under the Affordable Care Act. They will provide it to us. I don't think that anything in the ordinance calls for post-bid approval compliance checking. If the county wishes to engage in that, it can choose to do so. The ordinance certainly doesn't mandate it. And in terms of cost, if in the worst case scenario here, the county that has over 500 employees needs to add one additional full-time employee to do compliance checking for safety and wage and benefit standards that we set forth for workers in this county. I don't think we'll need to, but I think if we need to get you an additional full-time employee and add to our 550, make it 551, I think we can do that.
That's something that, clearly we need to have those needs projected so that we can properly budget. That's the thing is, what was Mr. Noker had, the gentleman from Lawson had talked about was the expense that they incur in their experience. I don't know if the figure is correct, $500,000 for Kansas City to do the compliance, but my understanding is that's not enough to get the job done.
Commissioner, that's on prevailing wage, which...
Well, the title of your thing is prevailing wage. I mean,
yes,
we talked about it being safety, but safety is nowhere in the title. Now, we come from a similar tradition where titles mean something on ordinance.
I'm happy to amend the title if you wish. It actually means nothing in terms of the enforcement of the ordinance. The words in the ordinance are what the ordinance does. I didn't actually write the title. I submitted the ordinance and county staff wrote the title. If you would like to critique it or modify it in some way, that's fine.
But by the way, it kind of brings you back to where did the original draft, was this model, and I don't mean to use parlance, but was this model legislation that was presented by a particular group to you that you were able to get, or was this made up of a whole cloth?
Yeah, no, absolutely. This has been constructed in consultation with folks in the labor world here in Kansas City, and I'm very proud of that fact.
Well, it's just that when somebody writes something, if somebody's writing a contract, which essentially this is akin to, the default opinion is that whoever writes a contract, well, by human nature, shaded in their favor as opposed to someone else's favor.
Well, Commissioner, you're getting into sort of motives and stuff. If you want to go down that path, we can certainly do that. You're the one who did a multi-million-dollar tax cut for rich commercial property owners here in this county. I voted against that. So that's, all the more amusing when I hear that maybe one employee makes this too expensive when we did a multi-million-dollar tax cut for the biggest corporate property holders, commercial property holders in the county. So, but if you want to go into motives and stuff, which I never did on that, I never asked you who talked to you about that and who wanted you to do that.
You didn't have to, because I said so when we started out. Well, if we'll go down that road.
no,
What happened was
You've gone down there. I don't want to go into motives.
But you brought it up. Taxpayers came to us, and they were medium-sized and small businesses. They came to the assessor's office, and to tell you the truth, we had a number of. I don't recall any large taxpayer coming in here and saying, "By God, you got to do this." This was because the complaint came from mediums and smaller sized.
Okay.
In fact, the one gentleman that we had a small business in Kearney, and he testified in favor of this thing. So, that is a mischaracterization at best.
I'm not characterizing your motives at all. My point is I didn't go there when you did your multi-million-dollar tax cut that disproportionately benefited the largest commercial corporation property holders in the county. I didn't go there for a reason.
But
You're now coming at me saying, well, the motives that I may have, or the motives of the folks who care about advancing worker safety pay and benefits, that our motives are somehow wrong or corrupt. We had another gentleman already speak tonight and say that we're doing the bidding of the unions, and that's not what I don't believe in going into motives when discussing public policy. I believe in discussing them on the merits. That's what I've always done. I'll continue to do it, and I would encourage all members of the commission to do the same.
As I said, you didn't need to inquire. I was up front. So, I mean, that is something that is a little bit of a... The thing is, we are now going through changes. And I think that we're probably going to be in agreement of what council had suggested as far as the word just being taken out that he had mentioned. So the thing is, we are still writing this legislation. This is very much a ready, fire, aim kind of a scenario. I'm used to reading legislation before I vote for it. 24 hours is not exactly
Commissioner,
a lot.
it's been 9 days, not 24 hours. I don't know why you keep saying 24 hours. It's been 9 days. You and a previous speaker have talked about your experience in Jefferson City repeatedly tonight. I haven't gone there either. I, as you know, also served 8 years in Jefferson City.
Yes, you did.
And as you know, we routinely voted on hundreds of pages of bills and amendments in a single day, day after day after day. This is effectively 5 pages, 1 page is a signature page, that we've had 9 days to work on. We've had vigorous public input last week and this week. The idea that this is somehow against what our norms and procedures are and that we're somehow violating what norms and procedures are is just not true.
The thing is, I have a practice in presiding here. The practice is if any commissioner asks for additional time to study an issue, I provide it. I do my best to allow every commissioner to study every issue that comes before us so that they feel confident in the vote they make. Now, are there people in Jefferson City who vote and don't read their legislation? Yeah, of course. I, unfortunately, was one of those people who sat in my office till late at night reading them. So I am in the habit of reading and trying to understand what it is I'm voting for. And I'm also in the habit of trying to understand what the fiscal note was. Right now, it seems to be all over the place. Like I say, although it's not quite apples and oranges, it's more like different kinds of apples. But the idea that the compliance for the municipal prevailing wage thing, and this is prevailing, I mean, if it's not prevailing wage, it shouldn't say prevailing wage. It should say this is a safety thing, which it does nothing more than add to the confusion that we're looking at here. The thing is, I would suspect that if this were heard in the first part of January, it would probably pass in some form, perhaps improved. But we are, in fact, pushing this through, and I realize you don't agree with my characterization. I certainly do that. I certainly mentioned it up front, but I'll ask this question. Give me an example of a project that we have done that we would be doing differently as far as what projects do we do that do not fall under the prevailing wage provisions? And I realize that you're trying to get healthcare involved in that, but give me an example of a project that we have done that would now qualify, that does not qualify at the present time.
Yes, so in the ordinance, we list the things that in addition to prevailing wage on projects that we pay prevailing wage on, which are public works projects over $75,000, we add A, that it has not been barred from bidding on any federal or state projects within the last year. That is not currently a requirement that we have. B, that they have and enforce a drug testing policy for all employees in the field. We do not currently have that on the books in the county. We do not require that of people bidding. C, they confirm the existence of employer-provided health care benefits. D, all employees will be licensed with the appropriate licensing authority. None of these things are currently required under current county policy. E, that prevailing wage will be paid. That we already do. F, all employees and employee supervisors will be OSHA certified and in compliance with then current OSHA safety requirements prior to working on the project, and F and G, all employee supervisors will be 30-hour OSHA certified. We don't require any of these things right now. That's all we're doing with this, is we're adding those things to prevailing wage. I think that it'll be good for workers. I think it'll create safer workplace conditions. I think it'll get rid of unscrupulous contractors. And I think it'll ensure that they do things like provide healthcare and safety standards. I don't find it to be an especially complicated or controversial item, frankly. I think it makes a lot of sense. I think it'll benefit workers in this county for years to come. And I'm sorry that the conversation has gotten a bit heated. In my view, this is a fairly straightforward thing to be doing. If the only reason I mentioned making changes in the future, I don't think we'll need to. In fact, if anything, I think we can go farther than this in the future. I think we can add additional things to this in the future. But I simply have pointed out that if for some reason something goes wrong, and this creates a complication that we don't foresee as we sit here today, we can change it. That's my only point. I don't think we'll need to, but we can if we need to. And I think that these are common sense measures that are going to be good for workers, and I suggest that we pass it.
I suspect they might be, but once again, I've seen a lot of legislation go through and it came out with problems. And do we have problems here? I don't know. I mean, we picked up on a few now. Why not do it right the first time? Why not go through this thing and say, you know what, here we go, do our due diligence, because we are making changes right now as we go along.
Yeah, I mean, respectfully, the change that has been suggested is a one-word change that our county councilor has suggested this evening. He thinks it already says what it says, that we're already fine with the way it reads. He simply thinks that by eliminating the word provided, it can make it extra clear. That is the extent of the change that's been proposed this evening. This isn't some wholesale flaws have been found here tonight. So I think we can make the one-word change. Hopefully that can button up and make it extra certain that it says what it says. And beyond that, I think we're in good shape. And again, if changes need to be made in the future, of course we can do that as a county commission.
Well, the thing is, okay, so I know where this is going to go, but I feel obligated, because to tell you the truth, to me, the idea of having the other commissioners weigh in and to have a fiscal note are matters of principle to me.
Well, as you know,
I know we disagree.
As you know, we've now had every commissioner weigh in. We've received contact from 2 of our additional commissioners that are coming on who say that they strongly support this, which would create a 4-person majority if we were to wait. And we heard the dissenting views from the other 2 as well. And so, and again, if at any point in the future somebody wants to amend or repeal or change this in any way, everybody will have the right to do so. Nobody's losing their rights as a commissioner. Nobody's precluded from making changes in the future. I think these are good common sense changes that will benefit workers. I look forward to moving it forward and moving on to the many other items of the day.
Once again, I feel like we have to engage in good government. We need to have fiscal notes, and if we've not done it in the past, then shame on us for that, obviously, but I think we need to, whenever we are, especially when we're trying to put together a budget, which is we're on the eve of. So, like I say, I know where this is going to go, but I feel morally obligated. The thing is, one of the great things, and I just want to express this, is that while you're right, the discussion has gotten a little heated, my opinion is that you are expressing sincerely held beliefs and that you're acting on those beliefs.
Thank you.
And I would like to think that you think that I am also acting on what I believe is right and what I believe is best government, because that is, I think that's the basis for these discussions, is that mutual respect that, yes, we are disagreeing, but there is a sincerity and there is no, and when I just want to make sure that that point is clear, because I think that's an important one, and that's really a bedrock for us going forward on this stuff, is to start with that baseline. So, like I say, I know where it's going to go, but I feel morally obligated to make the effort. And that is, I will make a motion that we table 2021 Ordinance 43 until such time as we have the other commissioners seated and we have a fiscal report that gives us an idea of what the cost to taxpayers is going to be. That is, as commissioners are aware, that is a privileged motion that does not allow for debate. So with that, with the, by the way, just for, I'm not debating, but just for the edification of the people here, during votes of the commission, the presiding commissioner votes only in the case of a tie, not, there are some rare occasions, but by and large, this will be a vote of the two associate commissioners. I will not have a vote unless there is a tie vote. So just for that clarification, in case you're wondering why I don't vote for my own motion. With that, would the clerk please call the roll?
No.
No.
I don't get a vote on that. I appreciate the thought, but I don't get to vote. Okay, so I mean, I think this is hurried. I don't think it's ready. I think more discussion is warranted, but I've beaten that horse about as many times as I believe I can beat it. Is there any other? I'm sorry, Commissioner Thompson. We seem to have left you out in a very significant way here. Is there anything you'd like to add to the discussion?
No worries. I was listening to you guys talk over there. I will just simply say that I believe that a supported worker equals a strong families and a strong community. And that is why I believe in this, and I think this is a great start in making Clay County a safer, better place for everybody. And I also believe that reasonable and well-intended people can disagree on items, but we can all get along and make better things for Clay County. And I hope that this is still the same in this circumstance, because I'm still friends and colleagues with both of you and all of the other commissioners coming in, and I look forward to making Clay County a wonderful place for everybody.
I'm sorry, I'm just contemplating for a moment.
Commissioner, if I could, I'd like to offer the amendment previously
Please
discussed.
go ahead. If you'd like to be recognized, please speak.
As County Council suggested, may help to clarify, I would like to offer the amendment to remove the word provided on page 2 of 6.
So is that, I think the proper order would be to have that as an amendment and we vote on it. Would that be?
I think the proper order might be to move to approve the ordinance and then have an amendment to it to remove the word provided, I think that's the right way to do it.
I believe you are correct. I guess we got so deep in the conversation, I'd forgotten where we were on procedure. Commissioner.
Thank you. I move to approve 2022 Ordinance 43.
Motion's been made for the approval of 2022 Ordinance 43. A discussion. Now we would go to your amendment.
The amendment as stated.
So the amendment has been restated, so now the first vote would be on the amendment, and then if that passes, the next vote, well, either way, the next vote is on the underlying motion.
My question was, I wanted to make sure staff was clear on the nature of the amendment. Very good. With that, any discussion? Seeing none, you're recognized to close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioner. And with that, I would move to approve. We've already done that, so if there's...
Right, yeah, we would go back to discussion of the...
Happy to discuss further if you all would like, or happy to move forward, however you want to do it.
Okay. I feel very badly going forward without a mechanism of some kind of financing attached to this. This is not good government. This is not the way we're supposed to run things. We need to have fiscal responsibility, and we need to make sure that if we're going to move forward on something, we are paying for it in a way that is responsible, and that is totally lacking in this. We don't know what we're doing as far as the fiscal part of it goes. With that, you're recognized to close.
Thank you. I just want to thank everybody for coming out on, both sides. It's always good to have citizens weigh in. I think that this is a really important and critical step toward ensuring the well-being of workers here in the county for hopefully generations to come, and very proud to close. I close.
With that, please call the roll.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
Very well. I'm going to move on my papers. Let me move my papers and we will continue with our agenda. I think that's an excellent idea. Commissioner Carpenter, I believe that your suggestion that we stand at ease for a few moments to allow those of us who've been sitting for some time to perhaps stretch our legs for a moment or two. It is roughly 4 minutes after the hour. We will reconvene approximately, because I'm always late, about 10 minutes after the hour. Now, let's make it 15 minutes after the hour. Thanks. 15.
Before I got here, possession of the signed ordinances once they're done. So-
I found a Jolly Rancher and got distracted.
Okay, we seem to have everybody here. All right, we are back. We will begin where we left off. We have just concluded dealing with 2022 Ordinance 43. That brings us to, on our regular agenda, to 2022-402, if that is correct. My agenda has a lot of scribbles and arrows, so I'm hoping that I'm correct.
You are correct. Resolution
If I am,
22
please proceed.
Sorry. Resolution 2022-402 is approval of a sole source vendor, STL Software Incorporated, to add a module to the existing personal property software for the assessor's office. Assessor Baldwin presented on this last week, and he's available if you have any additional questions.
Very good. Are there any questions or comments from the commission?
No questions.
And as we had heard that last week, we are ready to go ahead and I would be interested in a motion for passage of 2022-402.
I'll make a motion to approve 2022-402.
Motion's been made for the approval of 2022-402. Was there anyone who wished to comment on that? Seeing none, discussion?
None.
Seeing none,
Thanks.
you're recognized to close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
That brings us to 2022-403. Administrator?
Resolution 2022-403 is approving a change order for the Northeast 112th Street Bridge Replacement Project with Decker Construction. For the Highway Department, this change order is a net increase of $6,230. Highway Administrator Griffin was here last week and presented some information on this, and she's available if you have questions this evening.
Questions or comments on 403?
No questions.
Is there a motion related to 2022-403?
I move that we approve 2022-403.
Motion's been made for the approval of 2022-403. Discussion, seeing none, you're recognized to close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
That brings us to 2022-405, the last issue on our regular agenda for this evening. Administrator?
Resolution 2022-405 is approval of a term and supply contract with Van Wall Equipment for greens rollers for our Parks Department. This was presented last week to the commission, and staff is available for questions if you have any.
Are there any questions or comments?
No questions.
Seeing none, is there a motion related to 2022-405?
I'll make a motion to approve 2022-405.
Motion's been made for approval of 2022-405. Discussion, seeing none, you are recognized to close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
That concludes our regular agenda for this evening. Do we have any motions? I'm sorry, I lost a little bit of track. It was so long. Okay, so we're in good shape. That brings us to number 10, discussion items. Administrator?
Yes, the first item for discussion is a presentation on replica and cooperative agreements with various entities in Clay County. So I'm very excited to talk to the commission about this particular project. One of the things that we have been looking for is a data source so that we have access to information to make data-driven decisions, not only when it comes to asset management of the county, but also financial forecasting, economic development, trends. And so we've been in conversations with Replica the representative from the company has been very patient and is here this evening to give the commission an overview of the product. But when we started talking about it, one of the things that I did is started talking to my colleagues at the cities of Clay County to engage their interest in participating with the county for this subscription for data access. We were able to work with Replica in such that the county would actually be the umbrella contract with Replica and have unlimited subscriptions. They've also agreed for those communities in Clay County that have a cooperative agreement with us would also be eligible under a subscription for them to also have unlimited subscription for their staff for their use under this product. In working with the city managers from those cities, we have come to an agreement on how to allocate the costs for the subscription. And so In the agreement with Replica, the county would be agreeing to a 2-year contract with an annual premium of $48,000 a year. We have agreements already in place and already approved by city councils from the city of Kearney, North Kansas City, Liberty, Gladstone, Smithville, Excelsior Springs, and Kearney, if I didn't mention them. And so what we've all agreed to do is allocate the premium based on population of each entity. The county would pay the $48,000 annually, bill the municipalities under the agreements. They would reimburse the county, and so the county's cost for participating in this on an annual basis is $6,712.55. So we're very excited to take the lead and have this collaboration with the municipalities in Clay County, that we all have access to the same information and can utilize that to benefit our citizens, to improve our management of our assets, and to do long-range planning. And so with that, with your indulgence, I'd like to introduce Mike Lally, who is with Replica, and he has a brief, I assured you, a brief presentation to give you some insight into Replica and the tool that we will have available to ourselves and to our partners in Clay County.
Thank you, Diana. For the record, Michael Lally with Replica. Do I go ahead and make the...
You can try that, and we'll see if it works. Just stay with the pictures. We've had, there you go.
Just a quick overview. So Replica is a data platform focused on what we call the built environment. And when we say the built environment, we're talking about questions about mobility and economic activity and demographics and land use. Right now, in the area of data related to built environment, it's very fractured. There's information out there, there's data out there, but you have to go to a lot of different sources in order to get it. What we're trying to do as a company is organize the world's information about the built environment to make it more accessible and valuable and actionable. And so we're able to capture data that's dealing with transportation and spending and parking and land use and demographics, and put it all together in one place so you can access it and allow you to make better decisions. We're headquartered here in the Kansas City area. We do have offices in the Bay Area in New York City. We've grown in the last 3 years from just being 18 people to close to 80 people, and we're working across the country with departments of transportation, cities, counties, MPOs, transit agencies, economic development organizations, and firms in the architectural engineering and planning business all across the United States. Here locally, customers we've been able to secure in the last few years have been City of Lee Summit, City of Kansas City, Wright KC Development Corporation, City of Overland Park, City of Olathe, City of Topeka. So we've done a pretty good job here locally of getting companies interested in what we're doing and giving them the data to help them make better decisions in the work that they're doing. So, you know, we believe that the built environment is very complex. And what we're trying to do is give you this data so you can uncover these insights about people and mobility and the built environment and all the relationships in between. And it really starts by giving you a common operating picture through the data. And then as time moves forward, to continue to monitor what's going on. And if there's ever any type of intervention or some type of a project, you can see what the impact of it is. So it's kind of a continuous circle of activity that we're monitoring with our data. People always ask me, where's this all start? You know, where's this data come from? Well, it comes from us. I mean, if you have a smartphone, if you have a credit card, if you have a car that's was manufactured in the last few years, all those things are throwing off data. We're all throwing off data in the daily activities that we're doing. And so what we're doing, just to talk about mobile location data, we're capturing data that comes from telephones, you know, the actual telephone data. We're capturing data that comes from the mobile apps that are on your phone. We're capturing data that comes from what's called point of interest aggregations. So imagine being in a restaurant or an arena or a shopping center. We're able to capture the number of devices that are within that particular physical footprint. And then we're getting data from vehicles. And that's just to give you a sense of the mobile location data we're getting. And we're getting data from these other buckets, if you will, to allow us to paint a picture of the built environment. I want to point something out, that all the data we get is de-identified. You know, we're getting data associated with people's mobile devices, but that data is de-identified, and then the work we do with it further protects privacy. One of the big issues about our company, because there's really no real rules and regulations about privacy, we've taken it upon ourselves to be make it really a hallmark of our company, to make sure that we're trying to give people a collective understanding of what's happening related to the built environment, but we're not trying to cross that line where we invade people's privacy. We have 2 products, soon to be 3. So the county and the cities in the county will be getting our Trends product and our Places product. The Places product was our original product. We release it every 9 to 12 months. It's a very granular understanding of movement, mobility, transportation, and demographic information. The Trends product was really a product that came out of the pandemic. We were being asked by our customers, could you give us something where we can get a more up-to-date, a weekly understanding, if you will, of what's happening related to the movement of people and dollars in the community. And so we want to work and put together this Trends product. We're working on a 3rd product, Scenario. It's kind of what I call an if-what type product. It's a forecasting type of a tool, and we'll be releasing a beta version of that here in the early part of 2023. I just want to give you a couple examples of how Replica works. Now this is a screenshot from our Places product. And what I'm doing here, just working across the top, you can see I've identified the project as Clay County workers. Okay, so these are people who live in Clay County and are employed. And I'm looking at data from the spring of 2021. Right now in this particular product, we have data pre-pandemic in 2019, and then we're beginning to put together a library of post-pandemic data. And we're looking at the home location, which is Clay County. We're looking at trip purpose, which is to go to work. And then we're looking at the ages of a particular subset of workers. We're looking at an age group of 18 to 34 as the age. And then what the colored map has shown you there is the destination. This is where the workers who begin their day in Clay County, citizens here, where they ultimately go to work in the spring of 2021. And you can see in the upper right-hand corner there, it shows you there's about 25,000 workers who begin their day in Clay County, and you can see where they go throughout the rest of the Kansas City metropolitan area. Have another example here. This is starting with Kearney. So what I've done here is I'm looking at kind of a similar analysis, once again with our Places product, where I'm looking at data associated with Kearney, Missouri. The trip origin is Kearney. We're looking at the spring of 2021. In this particular case, we filtered the data, and this is really what Replica is. We've taken this huge data set from around the country, and you're able to filter the data, and we're filtering the data for income. And we're looking at it, in this particular case, you can't see it here, but I filtered it for data for income level between $50,000 and $75,000. And once again, the trip purpose is for work. So what we're able to show you there is about 800 people, 767, begin their day in Kearney, the residents of Kearney, and you can see where they go for work, who make that particular income level between $50,000 and $75,000. And then I got one last example I wanted to show you. This is from our Trends product. And what I'm showing you here is data that beginning before the pandemic. So we're looking at data beginning the week of February the 24th, 2020, going all the way through the week of November the 28th. So this is our near real-time product related to mobility and economic activity. And I'm taking data just associated with North Kansas City, Missouri. And you can see there that in late February, you can see what the restaurant and bar activity was like, and then the pandemic hit. And you can see the big dip in restaurant and bar activity from bars and restaurants were forced to close, and then began the rebounding effect. The yellow line is actually online spending, and you can see what was happening there in bar and restaurants. When they were closed, there was an uptick in online spending in order for people to get food and beverages from restaurants and bars. And you can see that it has stayed pretty stable ever since. The right side is grocery store spending in North Kansas City. You can see how there was a pretty good peak up right when the pandemic began happening, even with some online spending. Then it came back down as things began to normalize, and there's some other peaks along the way. But this is another example how we can give you a near real-time understanding of economic activity that's going on in a city, across the county, and really anywhere in the United States. And I'd be happy to stand for any questions, Commissioners.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your patience as we
No,
had
it's
a
my
rather
pleasure.
long debate.
No problem.
No, this is great. As far as the information goes, what would be the, how much of it would we have that would be for us as far as it not be shared beyond what we would have? Because I realize we have overlap with cities, so how does that work when you have overlapping jurisdictions?
Well, what we'll be doing, under our agreement, is that we'll be meeting kind of as one body. We'll be assigning a customer success manager to the account, and what we'll do is be working with representatives from the county as well as the cities, and kind of working with them kind of at the same time. We'll have an initial kickoff meeting, be working together throughout the length of the contract on periodic get-togethers, and we'll probably try to do it where we all get together at the same time, so there's opportunities to share information and learn from one another. I do want to share with you too that one of the things we've really done is invested heavily in technical support and in customer success people. We're just not going to drop it in Diana's lap and say good luck. We're really going to work with you. We want to learn, from you too about which kind of experiences you're having, what kind of insights you're gaining, and we're learning a lot from our customers about different use cases that are coming up. So hopefully that answers.
So there would be kind of like for lack of a better way to put it, crosstabs that we can sort of make some correlation from the data.
Absolutely, yeah.
There seems some obvious applications. Transportation is one of them, and how we might sculpt our requests for transportation assets to come north and how we would want them to route. What are some of the maybe not so obvious uses of this data as far as our ability to function as a government?
Sure. So a couple, like the city of Topeka subscribed to our platform in late 2020. They were wanting to get ahead of the curve, so to speak, related to understanding their sales tax revenues. And so they were always having to wait 60 or 90 days, like a lot of municipalities or local jurisdictions have to do, from the state government to give them their sales tax data. Now, while our data is not sales tax data, it's economic activity data, it's spending data, and they're using it as a proxy for sales tax data, so they can understand whether or not there's something unusual going on in a particular part of the city. And you can go all the way down to a census tract to get an understanding of that. Kansas City, Missouri just became a subscriber. They have it's not a very exciting use case, but it's a use case that has a lot of teeth. They have an asset management system, Commissioner, where they understand the condition of the pavement all across the city, but what they didn't have was traffic counts on a routine, consistent basis across the city. And so they're going to marry together our data together with their asset data to make better decisions about which streets ought to be preserved first or reconstructed first. And they found that to be a very powerful piece of information that will allow them to make better decisions. Overland Park is using it. They're going through a major rewrite of their comprehensive plan. And they want to have a common operating picture of what's happening across their city as they begin working on their new comprehensive plan. So there are there's really unlimited use cases related to this, because we have data related to how people are moving, how goods are moving, how dollars are moving, and the more we talk to our customers, we're finding different types of use cases. I will tell you the primary reason we got in business was really from a planning perspective. We found a lot of really strong planning use cases, but now we're finding a lot more on the operational side.
How does it work as far as the data goes? I mean, I'm not sure this is why I'm asking. So the data that we get, would that date pretty much from the time that we came on with you folks, or is there a backlog of data that we would be able to access? What I'm thinking in terms of is whatever use we put it to, some degree of a timeline to create sort of a statistical validity would, I think, be very helpful, so that we can see over the course of an extended period if trends were just seasonal, or if that was something that we could depend on as far as future planning.
That's one of the key reasons why we're doing what we're doing. We don't go any further back than late 2018, early 2019. Okay. That's because kind of when we started our company. But the beauty of Replica is that you'll always have that data, and then going forward. And our trends data is very powerful to understanding week-over-week activity and what's happening. Our places data gives you an understanding what's happening, looking at things on a seasonal basis. But as I was telling somebody on a call the other day, we're going to help you build a library, where you're going to have data beginning in 2019. And really, pre-pandemic data, I think, is very important to have. But the world's changed a lot, you know, and so, you know, if you're relying on data from 2017 or earlier, it's not a great idea, but we're going to be able to give you a good starting point with a pre-pandemic season and moving forward.
You know, it just occurred to me as you were saying that one of the things that would make this useful was if, God forbid, we find ourselves in another similar situation, we would have the data available to us that might inform us on how we could move forward and more efficiently deal with that kind of a situation, because we would have the history to certainly make some conclusions and to draw some assumptions.
100%. And I think it also would do, if there's some event and if something like that would happen, you'd be able to monitor it in near real time. And I think what was happening during the pandemic was that it was going on. People were concerned that as it dipped down, it was going to go out, you know, for who, you know how long. And I think what the surprise that people, when people see the data, how quickly it rebounded in terms of economic activity, trip activity, and so on. There's been changes. A lot of work from home activities happening now. There's less transit ridership. You know, there's more online spending. I mean, there's definitely some clear behavioral changes that have happened since then. But yeah, you can you know, monitor and catch in near real time what's happening with certain behaviors that are happening.
I appreciate the fact that you said that the data would not just be dumped here and it's just like, have a nice day, because the analytics of it are certainly something that, you know, some degree of technical expertise would help greatly in interpreting that in the most constructive way for us. Mm-hmm. Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you. No, thank you so much for sticking around tonight and a little longer meeting than we're used to. But I do love that this is a collaborative effort with our municipalities, and I look forward to once we get our hands on some of this.
We're thrilled about that. We've had that opportunity in the state of Illinois. We really like that opportunity to pull everybody together and work together, and we're thrilled that we're able to do it with all of you here in Clay County.
Wonderful. Well, thank you once again.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Carpenter.
Thank you. I look forward to participating in the data program if the commission decides to. I think it's a great idea. I think the only question or concern that citizens would have would be to make sure that they're not being tracked by the government. And you can assure the citizens of Clay County that this is all anonymized data, and there is no scenario in which government employees would have access to where people are going.
That's correct, and I mentioned the work we do with that data further protects privacy. And then once people have it available, we only let them filter the data down to a certain point. So we can't go to my cul-de-sac and say, what's going on with these 3 homes here? We don't let that happen. We have a certain limitation in terms of the level of filtering you can do. So privacy is a big deal to us, and we're just trying to give state and local governments a collective understanding of what's happening without crossing that line.
Gotcha. Thank you.
And I think Commissioner Carpenter raises an excellent point that, yeah, we would want to make sure that there was never even any consideration that there would be some sort of tracking that would be anything more than statistical, nothing that would be identifiable to any individuals or even groups of individuals. So it's good to know, and as we go forward, certainly we'll get more information and the assurances that I think our citizens are going to want to hear about. So I'm glad Commissioner Carpenter brought that point up.
If I could interject a couple of items on the line of how the county could use this. First of all, one that is very interesting to us is the online sales, because really we have no information, from anywhere. Certainly from the state, we get use tax, but we have no information, and certainly we're very interested in taking a look at that and utilizing that. We had several demonstrations with the city managers and their staff, and I will say this about Replica, that it's a very powerful search engine and user-friendly filtering, so that you can, depending on what you're wanting to look for, you can create those paradigms and, get to the data that you're looking for. One of the things with our tourism and marketing position, and certainly talking to Kearney and some of the other cities in Excelsior Springs about having that data about trip travel, so when we have events in the county, where are they coming from and where should we be marketing. So I think there's a lot of opportunities here. The other item, and I think Mike alluded to it, is it's not just, Clay County data we have access to, or Missouri's data, or Kansas in this region. We have it from across the United States. So as we continue to grow and develop and use data and do benchmarking against other counties across the country, we have access to their data too. So if we're looking for something and we can say, this is what we're aspiring for, and this county has that, then that's a great contact to go and say, what are you doing? How are you making that work? So I think there are a lot of opportunities here as the county continues to grow, use data in our decision-making process and allocating resources. This is a great tool for us.
Okay. Any further questions or comments?
And just point of clarification, this will be back on your agenda for next week for approval for the agreement with Replica and agreeing all the contracts or cooperative agreements that all the other municipalities have signed. The goal is everyone's interested in getting started, and this would be effective January 1st of 2023.
Okay. So we're going to take it up and pass it on the 21st.
Yes, that's the plan.
Okay, yeah, I'm just a little concerned because it seems quick. And I don't know, maybe I'm harkening back to our previous conversation that I tend to slow walk this kind of thing sometimes just to make sure I've got a good handle on it. We can discuss that further as we go. I'd like to make sure that I'm very aware of what's going on, but perhaps we can get a little extra information in the interim that would help inform us as we move forward.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. If you have specific questions or information that you want. Unfortunately, due to our technology, we couldn't bring it up live because of the internet for you to actually see it in motion. But if you want to share what your specific questions are, we can certainly get you the information. Right.
Yeah, my concern is we're probably talking about, my brain's a little bit mush right now, but I'm sure we are dealing with a significant expenditure, so I would certainly want to have some consideration.
Again, remember, the county's portion of this, because of the agreements with the cities, is $6,712.55.
That's true. Yes, it is much. Thank you for reminding me of that because I had, like I said, a little bit of a tired mind here. But still in all, I want to make sure that we are being duly diligent with the people's money.
Absolutely. Thank you, Commissioners.
Very good. Thank you. Administrator? Is there anything else?
Yes, the next item that is on the agenda is the presentation, the third workshop on the 2023 proposed budget, doing a deeper look into the road and bridge funds and the park funds. And in the interest of time, and because we want everybody to, not necessarily be so tired when we go through budget information, because it's all about numbers, what we would recommend is that we pull that particular presentation from tonight's meeting and add it to next Wednesday's meeting. Would be at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It would be the last meeting of the year. And we would have this presentation along with the fourth workshop, which is on the CIP and the forecasting of our budget.
Okay, very good. That brings us to County Administrator comments.
And just all I have to add is, again, a reminder that the meeting next week is December 21st, Wednesday at 3 o'clock here in the chambers. It is the last meeting of the year, and we will be adding all those budget workshops together. Also, again, I'd like to reiterate best wishes to Sandy in her retirement and wish her all the best. And thank you for everything.
Very good. That brings us to Commissioner comments. Commissioner Thompson?
I would just like to second Diana's about Sandy's retirement. This is kind of a huge deal, Sandy Baldwin. So, once again, I will miss you very much, and safe journeys on retirement with Jim. So,
Commissioner Carpenter?
Sandy's the best. I agree.
Well, I hope you appreciate that we wanted to make sure that this meeting lasted extra long so we get to spend more time with you. We, in fact, had no deliberations whatsoever. We just were kind of making it up as we went along just so we could spend time with you. Very well. With that, there are reports that we have?
Yes, in the agenda packet was the auditor's cash basis monthly report for November of 2022.
And all commissioners have received that report. Very good. That brings us to recess and adjournment.